Dedication, believe in a deal. Welcome to podcast that's filled with social awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and online nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy occultist, aka Dolphin Theater, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello, everyone. We're still in the September slow slump period, but that means October is slowly but surely inching ever closer. Hooray!
Right. And I am your host, Spice Time Lord Wannabe, the grandson of pop culture. How's everyone doing?
I am doing mostly okay. I've mostly just been bored most of today.
Mm-hmm. Kind of, yeah, kind of similar. I had some, well, nothing of this week has been truly like eventful, but I did finally, after a few months, due to, again, personal reasons I'm not going to get into, I was finally able to go to the comic book shop once again. Although, granted, because I was not able to go every month like I usually do, I wasn't able to like grab a lot of the comics I would have gotten, mainly like continuations of series and stuff. But I got two that were actually really fun. I still need to read one of them, but yeah, um, yeah. So that's kind of the highlight of my week so far.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, forgive me for a second. So I'm trying to figure out where we were last time because we have the Hollywood Reporter article from last week, which, for the record, please go check that out.
Yeah,
The first half,
previous episode.
yeah.
Previously on Podcast The Storm.
Yeah.
And now the conclusion.
So forgive me if I am a little bit distracted at the moment. I am trying to find a place where we stopped at.
I forgot that we ended up having to split it, actually.
It was kind of longer than we had thought, so
It's nowhere near as long as the Star Wars article, though, I hope.
No, but it just due to time. So we had to sorry. Yeah,
and then there's going to be another article we might end up having to split because it's long. The Rotten Tomatoes one. The only thing that majorly happened on the news cycle yet.
Okay. 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 Oh, hello, Dragon Troll and Silvertown Gaming. Sorry, I just got onto the stream like that.
Hello, kids.
How are you guys? I'm doing well then. So, I'm actually gonna be reading. Well, like I mentioned earlier, I got comic books. One of them actually being Common America. I'm actually looking forward to reading that. Granted, it is Volume 3, and I have not read Volume 2 yet.
Created by friends and former guest stars of the channel, Tim Lim and Mark Pellegrini. Although I don't think they enjoyed their brief excursion into this show, which would explain why they haven't come back yet.
Well, that and also I think that was actually one pretty early on. To be fair, we were still getting
Yeah, we didn't really have the formula down just yet, but I still don't think Mark and Tim enjoyed themselves as much as I wish they would have. I
Mm.
always do that. I always try to advance my reputation with important people, and it always ends up backfiring on me. Eh.
Okay, so I did back it up a bit, so we have some context for what we're reading. And just so fans remember, this is again from the Hollywood Reporter. Um, the sorry, my mind is so fucking slow tonight. I don't know why.
The article is called "Where Have All the DC Fans Gone?" The short and correct answer to that is a series of bass-ackwards creative decisions, um, absolutely shitty professional PR decisions, and a failure to read the room or even not come off as arrogant pricks is the answer to that.
Right.
But the Hollywood Reporter in the previous section of this article, and probably more in this section of the article, thought it was the fans' fault, because why not?
Mm. So like I said, we are going to have to reread a paragraph that we read last week, just so
Just to get our bearings as to where we were in the bit.
yeah. Shall we?
We shall.
A decade of constantly shifting decisions, the executive musical chairs, overly aggressive critics, and overly aggressive fans have left DC fandom a house divided. The reflections of which we can see all over social media. It's a swamp that even Swamp Thing would be hesitant to dip a mossy toe into. Should I keep reading or?
No, I will briefly revisit my previous thoughts from last week's episode. It is not the fans' fault. Because DC went out of their way, DC and Warner Brothers went out of their way to screw over their fans and or deliberately mock them as toxic. And when you go out of your way to piss someone off, you do not then get to complain when they act as though they are pissed off. And the fact that you don't seem to understand how the internet works and how internet rage manifests is a result of a bunch of y'all being boomers and another set of y'all being incredibly out of touch Gen Xers to the point that you're honorary boomers, because Gen Xers tend to be a little bit more with it than that. But nevertheless, the point is, you don't understand how fandom works. You don't understand how the internet works, and you don't understand that you are illiterate of both of these things. So when bad things happen to you as a result of your own ignorance, you blame the fans because it must be the fans being immoral and out of touch and shitty instead of us being out of touch aristocratic toffs. It's literally the Simpsons meme of Principal Skinner looking around at the students doing things he doesn't understand and going, "Am I the one who's out of touch? No, it must be the children. That's what you're doing. It's not the fandom's fault for being pissed off at you for you trying to piss them off. It is your fault for trying deliberately to piss them off in the first place. Because, as the old saying goes, thou shalt fuck around and thou shalt find out."
Yeah. There are those who are optimists about DC's future and eager for a read the following Gunn and Catherine's chapter one in January. Okay, so I actually it's not for the record. I know we've made a lot of we talked a lot about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that we don't hate it, obviously. I just think the premise and um, it's just been weirdly marketed. I think is the thing.
The new Gunverse, you mean?
Yeah,
Here's we've gone through this 5 ways from Sunday, but here's way
Mhm.
6 from Sunday. There are a couple problems with the Gunverse. One, James Gunn cannot read the room to save his fucking life. And problem 2, DC still goes out of its way to piss off its own fan base by getting rid of a bunch of shit people liked and wanted to see some kind of continuation of, and keeping a bunch of shit that people not only didn't like to begin with, but were actively hostile to begin with. Problem 3 is similar to problem 2, but not entirely the same, which is when you go out of your way to piss people off and they get pissed off, you double down and try to piss them off more. Because you don't see why it's a problem that you're calling a new movie in a Superman franchise something that is normally reserved for the title of sequels. And of course, number 3, and this goes back to something James Gunn said years ago, when he was asked years ago, before he ever even got this gig, what he would do with a Superman movie, he said he didn't want to do a Superman movie because he didn't understand the Superman mythos or character. Which is fair enough, but the problem is he's tasked now with doing a Superman movie, and it seems like, for all the world, he still feels the same way about the character, and the way he's choosing to get out of it is by replicating the same mistake that BDS made and trying to cram the entire Justice League into the first movie, rather than allowing the universe to slowly motherfucking build over time and being as sincere and honest to each character in turn as they can be. Also, there's a problem with the creative direction, even aside from James being a bit of a public relations twat, which is when people heard that James Gunn was taking over the DC universe, there were one of two reactions. The normies wanted to completely start over with the normal characters. And then there was the reaction from the people who were obscure comic book fans and who were really, really big fans of James Gunn's ability to make obscure comic book franchises work, which is, we wanted to see him go full James Gunn and give us obscure characters outside of the big three, especially because of the aforementioned public relations nightmare with the big three at the moment. But instead of doing either of these two things, either going full normie and delivering the big three first and then branching out from there, instead of doing that, or instead of doing the go full James Gunn mode and go mostly obscure characters and introduce the big three later after people have had time to cool off about the Henry Cavill thing, especially, instead of doing that, there's this hodgepodge of trying to please everyone by giving normies normie stuff to look forward to and giving people who like the obscure stuff to look forward to, but it's going to wind up pleasing no one because it doesn't conceptually actually work. Which probably has something to do with the fact that not only did they release the information on all of this too early, they only released half of the first chapter or phase, which was in and of itself mind-numbingly stupid, especially because there were still three or four movies that had to come out before we could even get started on the new set.
Right, and I also want to point this out. Like I mentioned this when we were watching the video, it lacks a very much a visual flavor to get people in. You know,
well,
like,
yeah.
I know it's superficial, but it's just
if you're going to come with the receipts, you best come with the receipts.
Yeah,
basically.
It was just a video of James Gunn talking.
And similar to how it aesthetically didn't really work, it also conceptually didn't really work because there's no discernible direction. For example, the phase is called Gods and Monsters, which you would think takes the universe in one of two directions. Either it's an adaptation of the Gods and Monsters storyline, which would probably appease most of the normie comic book fans, or it's focusing on God and monster concepts and characters, which would please the obscure comic loving set of people like myself. Because of course DC does have a fuck ton of gods and monsters and characters in that same vein that they could go off of. But instead of doing either of these sensible things, there appears to be a model from James and Peter that basically boils down to, we will throw random shit at the wall and see what sticks.
Mhm.
And yeah, no, that's, even outside of the tonal issues that the Snyderverse had, that was one of the biggest problems to begin with, was they just threw any old thing at the wall and saw what stuck. And then if anything underperformed what compared to what they thought it would do, they just course corrected like a motherfucker and completely abandoned the previous direction.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, moving on.
All right. Although, I guess to end it, like, I want to like James Gunn. You know, I really do. I respect the guy and I like his style and all that, but it feels oddly like they're just throwing things at the wall and taking whatever sticks.
Well, it's like I was saying earlier. It's not normie enough to please the normies because there's too much obscure bullshit going on with it. And it's not James Gunn enough to please the James Gunn fans or the obscure comic book fans, because in my head, a James Gunn directed or James Gunn headed franchise with the tagline Gods and Monsters in the DC universe, okay, I'm thinking Swamp Thing, I'm thinking the Lords of Order and Chaos, I'm thinking Trigon, maybe. There are so many characters who are god or monster adjacent. Hell, give us a Spectre, especially if it was based on the John Ostrander Spectre. There are so many characters in the god and monster sort of realm that never get enough play because people are always focused on the big three. So you tell me James Gunn is going to give us a DC universe and the first phase of it is going to be called Gods and Monsters. I'm expecting, okay, so there are going to be gods and there are going to be monsters. In actuality, no, almost none of that is the case. Like, we are getting a Swamp Thing, technically, but it is one of the last things that is even in the first half of Chapter 1 of the new DCU. And none of the other characters really tie in. Not even given the toys they have to work with. Because you could tie in the Green Lantern mythos to the concept of gods and monsters by focusing on the Lovecraftian creatures that are in the power batteries and the wider cosmic mythos of the Green Lantern Corps. But instead of that, it's an Earthbound buddy cop movie, which is not anything what people who like Green Lantern wanted, by the way. When, like, whether you're talking about fans of the Silver Age Green Lantern, which are the space cops, or the Golden Age Green Lantern that got his powers from basically a magic meteorite that got turned into a genie lamp, and then got turned into a rail lantern for modernization purposes. Whether you're talking about either of those, what you want from a Green Lantern franchise is you want the cosmic space cop angle on some level. But no, instead it's Earthbound, and instead of being a cosmic romp buddy cop movie, it's a Earthbound street level buddy cop movie, because why not? And of course, technically we're getting continuations of Wonder Woman, but it's going to be a complete reboot, which is going to piss off fans of Gal Gadot's version, and it's going to be a series, which means it's not going to feature anything too big because budget. Oops. And of course, they're doing the stupid thing of, well, Superman is metaphorically a god. God damn it. I know, but it's just too much. Anyway, moving on.
I agree. Again, time and also repeating. So.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
Right. Okay. There are those who are puzzled over what the DCU actually is, given the mixed messaging behind some actors and projects continuing, like Suicide Squad spin-off, Peacemaker, while most will not. There are those who lament that Snyder did not get to finish the saga as he envisioned, but there are others who have moved on, which the director has. There are those who find a reboot unnecessary, given the decade of work that's gone into building the DCU. There are those who have taken a cult-like approach to Snyder's films, making them and him their entire identity, and crowding out those who are just fans of his movies didn't conjure up images of Eminem Stan with violent threats and mobilized harassment. And there are those who have moved on from the whole comic book movie.
Okay, fuck you. Superhero fatigue is not a thing. You're just the people behind the genre are just massively mismanaging the genre. Secondly, I'm not actually part of any of these sets, because here's the thing. This is not the second time the DC Universe has gotten rebooted in the last decade. It is the third time that it got rebooted in the last decade. The previous one was a soft reboot that featured things like Wonder Woman 1 and 2, the Shazam movies, the second Suicide Squad movie, Black Adam, etc., and of course Aquaman. But they abandoned the soft reboot angle and decided to go a much harder reboot angle. And that was a horrible mistake, because I don't like the Snyderverse. I never did like the Snyderverse. I think it's an embodiment of all the worst aspects of edgy, grimdark 90s-ness. However, I did really like the soft reboot that featured things like Wonder Woman 1 and 2, Aquaman, both Shazam movies, Suicide Squad 2, and Black Adam. Because that, I felt, was a far more tonally sane, or rather tonally satisfying way to go about the DC Universe. Rather than trying to literally do everything the opposite of the way Marvel did it, they were like, okay, let's take some pointers from what is successful about their movies and do it with our characters. Why that wasn't the first choice, I will never understand. But point being, there are actually 3 iterations of the DC Universe to choose from here. I didn't like the first one. The first one was the Snyder Ayerverse. Didn't like it, with the exception of the Snyder Cut of Justice League, which was good. But didn't like the Snyder Ayerverse. Then at the other end you have the Gunverse, which by all rights it doesn't seem like I'm going to like, even though I should, because of the aforementioned reasons that I just went into. But right in the middle there was the soft reboot option of, we're going to tonally and conceptually rejigger what started as the Snyderverse to make it more in line with other comic book movies, and we're going to minimize the 90s grimdarkness. That would have been a solid place to continue with, especially because what was being built up in Black Adam was a focus on the Golden Age characters, like the Justice Society. But instead, we get that entire soft reboot era, the one that actually worked to some meaningful degree, blacklisted. And instead of allowing James Gunn to go full James Gunn, because I'm sure Warner Brothers is on some level behind the sort of normalization of James Gunn. But instead of letting James Gunn go full James Gunn and make a clean break from the previous iteration, and also putting the big 3 on the shelf for a little while, letting Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves become the Batman of the new DC universe, and building up from there. They are doing this half in, half out, trying to please the normies, trying to please the hardcores, and end up pleasing no one, while simultaneously also shitting on our fan base on Twitter every 5 fucking minutes. Because apparently no one has told anyone in Hollywood, if you alienate your customer base, you wind up with a lack of customers. But I digress. Moving on.
It's a difficult and often hostile environment for any casual fan to thrive in. And too much work for those, myself included, who are invested in these characters for finding online discourse to be filled with friends. Many of those who were excited about Man of Steel and Affleck back in the summer of 2013 and found much to appreciate in follow-up BVS, Batman vs. Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, have since receded to the background, keeping our DCEU fandom close to the vest while being crowded out by the hashtag brigades and burnout jealous. Burn book
Okay.
jealous.
Again, it is not the fan base's fault, and they are not to blame for this. Once again, if you go out of your way to alienate and piss off your core audience, you do not then get to complain when your core audience feels alienated and angry with you.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, put simply, stop blaming the fans for something that is the studio's fault. They are the ones who are accountable to their audience. Their audience is not accountable to them. If they mismanage the IP and the audience has the nerve to explain to them that they are mismanaging it, then it is the studio's fucking fault, not the audience. I don't even like the Snyder Bros, just to be clear. As I said, I find Zack Snyder's take on the DC universe to be way too much in the grimdark deconstructionalist 90s period that I don't like, and I don't think his Randian objectivism, which he insists on plugging into literally every conceivable hole, works for all the characters, especially not the first character he tried to use it on in his version of the universe, which was Superman. Superman is not in any way Randian or objectivist. He is an idealist. And trying to make him fit in the Randian objectivist mold is only going to serve to break and distort the character. However, even though I disagree with the Snyder fans, I am not going to call them invalid. I am not going to say, well, you're not real fans, because that is self-evidently not true. Because, whether I like it or not, the 90s grimdark, deconstruct everything, be edgy with everything era of comics did exist. And a lot of people, especially a lot of people in my generation, grew up with and consumed wholesale that type of mentality. So they saw reflected, they saw in the Snyderverse that era reflected. And so naturally they were pleased with it. They were wrong for various reasons, up to but not including the fact that it doesn't fit the characters that they tried to use it on. Like, for example, it makes sense for Batman to be dark and objectivist and edgy to some degree. It makes even more sense for the Question to be dark, randy, and objectivist and edgy, because that's what the Question was literally conceived as. It does not make sense to take a principled idealist like Superman and turn him into a I need a rational justification for literally goddamn everything, otherwise I would be a tyrant. Randian objectivist type person. But even so, they are valid fans, and hashtag activism is not something that they invented anyway. It is something that is part and parcel of any discourse on the internet, and I would point out, oh great denizen of the Hollywood Reporter, that your side, the side that believes in things like social justice and toxic fandom, and how we have to alienate the core audience from any given IP because they're childish idealists that we have to break of their optimism. your side engages in far more hashtag activism, far more moralistically and far more fervently than any fandom. You just don't. You just think hashtag activism is good when we do it. It is bad when anyone we consider to be morally invalid does it, and you can go fuck yourself. Um,
I'm back, by the way.
yeah. Moving on.
While the MCU has been able to create a fairly unified fan base, though not without its own share of sycophants and antagonists, nobody really has a strong idea of what DC fans want or who the fans really are. At the moment, it doesn't even feel possible for DC to have a celebratory DCU uh, Hall H count at San Diego Comic Con. Certainly not one without a plane flying over the city with a banner proclaiming hashtag sell Zack Snyder's Justice League to Netflix, the latest hashtag campaign.
Honestly, I'm still sitting here in my middle position of like everything in the Snyderverse was crap, with the exception of the Snyder's Justice League, where his style actually fully came to the fore. However, the soft reboot period between Wonder Woman, with the obviously with the exception of the Whedon League, and ending with Black Adam, was a good period, and we should have continued with that. We should have built up the broader DC universe off of the back of Black Adam. Yes, I know it underperformed. Yes, I know it performed like a Phase 1 movie. But here's the thing. When you're trying to get your reputation back, you do actually have to build up from square one. And that's been Warner Brothers and DC's problem this entire time. They want to jump the queue. They want to jump all the way from Iron Man 1 to Avengers 1 without having to do any of the work that Phase 1 did in between. And you can't fucking do that. You can't go from Man of Steel to BVS. That will only overbloat and confuscate things, and it will make that movie seem like it's underperforming because you expect that a movie, not without cause, mind you, you expect that a movie that features both Batman and Superman and sets up the rest of the Justice League should easily make $1 billion. And had you done it right, it could have easily made $2 billion. If BVS was the capstone of DC Phase 1 in a similar way to the way Avengers worked, you could have easily made $2 billion and everyone would have been happy. But because you didn't do a Man of Steel 2, a Man of Steel 3, and then a Batman movie, and so on and so forth, and maybe Wonder Woman could have come out in like 2016 instead of, like Wonder Woman and Batman could have both come out in 2016, and then like Man of Steel 2 could have come out in 2017, and then like Wonder Woman 2 could have come out in 2018, and Aquaman maybe also in 2018, and then we could have gotten BVS as the end capstone of DC Phase 1. But because you wanted to jump the queue and didn't do any of the intermediary steps, everyone was like, this is only the second movie in the franchise and you're already expecting it to crack $1 billion, and you're cramming. I'm gonna quote the Marvel DC song. You cram the entire Justice League all up inside your movie universe. God, I love that song so much.
So, I mean, I think we've had discussions often about this. I legitimately think it could have worked if there was more effort. Well, okay, let me rephrase this. I granted, I do think there should have been a movie in between Man of Steel and BVS to kind of help bridge the gap between them, like a Batman movie,
It would
But
have also helped to set up the conflict between Batman and Superman, and so it would
yeah,
have made sense why they were squaring off instead of we just met each other and we already hate each other and we already have. And again, I know I mentioned this last time, so I'll mention it again here. One of the biggest problems was Zack Snyder's desire to jump from major storyline to major storyline, not realizing that the whole reason why Dark Knight Returns and Death of Superman worked is because they were happening to establish characters that already had established connections. The two best moments in Dark Knight Returns are the moment where Batman basically roasts Superman to his face. The famous in all your years to come, in your most private moments, I want you to remember the one man who beat you. That bit. But also the bit immediately following that where Superman gets shot with a kryptonite gas arrow and it infects his lungs, and Bruce, even in this moment of, he should be probably beating the shit out of Supes if he were actually his enemy, he says, um, I just want you to know, Clark, it took years and it cost a fortune. I didn't have to settle for making it as diluted as it is. It will work your way out of it will work its way out of your system in a couple weeks. Um, I didn't have to settle for that. That is him admitting, even if we disagree, even if we're ideologically opposed to one another, I still love and respect you. Which is a hell of an admission from freaking Batman, especially Frank Miller's Batman.
mhm.
Um,
um,
but but neither of those things can work if Superman literally just showed up 5 minutes ago, and this is the first time we're meeting Batman right now.
right. Um, oh wow. Okay. Did you cover Dragon Pearl's latest comment?
Which one?
The one that happened 10 minutes ago, just now.
Oh, the can we come up with a term for this? Um, I might be able to think of a term, not off the top of my head. Fan shaming doesn't really cover as much of it as I would want a term to cover. This is the problem. It's difficult to reduce what's going on here down to um a snappy piece of terminology because there's a lot of moving parts in the aristocratic fuck up that is this mindset. I guess there you could call it the aristocratic fuck up if you wanted to really reduce it down, but that's about as much as I can reduce it down because it is the both moral and social aristocracy poo-pooing the morally invalid people in their own opinion.
Can we move on?
Yeah.
Usually, it's barely possible to go to a movie theater for a new DC film opening night and feel like you're there sharing the experience with like-minded friends. If you're sharing the theater with anything other than rows of empty. Okay, so granted, this is a personal thing. My family, when we go to movies, this is just movies in general, mind you. But we go a few weeks, maybe like a week or so after, just because we never like the big crowds and stuff. I've told this story plenty of times on here, but
Hmm.
when we went to go see BVS, like in 2016, right? It was like a premiere week, it was like a premiere weekend of it.
Hmm.
We got the 3D like IMAX. We went to the 3D one, like the IMAX one.
Hmm.
It was so crowded. We had to be on one of those like those like the floor seats.
Oh, the like right next to the screen shit.
Yeah, you have to look up. And the worst part is, again, we have the 3D glasses. I want to point that out immensely. We are sitting not only on like the ground floor of the theater, but in a corner row as well.
Mhm.
So not only are we having to look up, we have to have our head tilted to a side.
Ew, that must be terrible for your neck. That happened to me and my friends when we went to see Guardians 2 in the theater. Um, it wasn't quite as bad because we were dead center still, and it was Guardians 2, so it was a good movie.
Mhm.
It was worth the trouble for, but yeah, my neck did hurt for like a week after that. Also, something meaningless gripe from me here. Dear theaters, if you're gonna use the fucking guard railing, the guard railing to help people who have difficulties walk, um, don't have a giant ass gap in the middle of it. This will never cease to fucking irritate me. There were like guardrails um for me to hold on to as we were walking up and down the stairs. But like right smack in the middle of them, there was this giant like 2 or 3 foot gap in the guard railing, and I'm sitting there going, how and why the fuck would you do guard railing like that? Because anyone who needs the guard railing needs it continuously.
There's no steps in between that, because that I can understand, right? But there
No,
any steps?
this was on a set of stairs. Is the thing, which is again speaking as someone who has lived with a disability his entire fucking life, is something that you need the guard, especially stairs are something you need the guardrail for, and yet
Uh,
there was like a 3 foot gap
Wait, okay.
i i in
It's in the center of the stairs, right? And so we're on the same page with that.
yeah yeah
Oh, yeah. Oh, now I know. Yeah, I'm aware of that. Well, okay. Depending where the theater I go to, it has like sets of rows of chairs, like even like smaller, like two ones that are closer to the walls. So that is explainable, sort of, kind of, not
yeah.
really. Actually, think about it,
It's just like because standing there trying to use these guardrails to navigate the steps because the walker that I was using is completely useless on steps, which is the other thing.
right.
But so my friends and I are trying, my friends and I are trying to get me situated um into our seats, which not for nothing, but I fucking hate assigned seating in movie theaters. I hate it so fucking
Oh,
much.
I'm so lucky I don't have that at all.
Yeah, I don't normally have it either because I live in a small town that is literally like 2 intersections and a side road, and our movie theater is like 45 minutes away, and even it is in a small town, so we don't usually do assigned seating and shit. But um, at this particular point, we were going to a steampunk convention in New Jersey, and it was a large enough town that you did need the assigned seating thing, and I hate the fucking assigned seating.
You live
Only
in
had
a,
to deal with it once, and I hate it.
I live
Um,
in a city and you don't even have that.
yeah, but
Granted, uh, anyway, no, we're so far from.
yeah,
I
but
will.
back
Last thing,
back
it
on
wasn't really my neck.
back on point to my meaningless
Uh,
gripe. Yeah, yeah, guys, if you're gonna spring for the assisted technology, don't half-ass the assisted technology because there are people who actually fucking needs it. But that's neither here nor there. Um,
so,
but
I,
point being, back to the article.
I have like one last thing.
Okay,
So
sorry.
again, so it wasn't really my neck that really had the problem. Because okay, it's 2016, so I would have been about 16 actually. So I was still pretty young. Um,
Hmm.
More so my eyes, because you got to remember that I have glasses. I've had glasses for most of my life now.
Mm,
And I'm wearing the 3 glasses over, which usually isn't a problem. But the fact that I have to, it's the 3D at an
the
angle, not
angle,
looking
yeah, I
out.
imagine you were giving a
I got a
headache.
major, yeah, I got such a major headache from that.
Yeah. But back to the actual article, this
Yeah.
person like morally shaming her fellow moviegoers. One, why the fuck do you care who you're sitting next to if they didn't come with you and you don't know them? That's issue number one. You shouldn't be under any obligation to know or care who you're in the movie theater with. And if the abstract notion of, oh, those people over there might be bad people is enough to ruin the movie experience for you, you are a paranoid, moralistic nutcase. And frankly, it's next to impossible for you to enjoy anything. And secondly, again, the fans are not the problem. The studios go out of their way to piss off, enrage, and alienate people, and then you bitch at the people for feeling slighted when the studio goes out of their way to slight them. Do you see how that's not the right way around? Especially for those of you, Hollywood Reporter, and don't get me wrong, I may be wrong and this person might not be a massive social justice warrior, but given how far they're going with the toxic fandom narrative, I'm reasonably sure there's at least a passing familiarity with the more radical pieces of social justice in this person's mind. But point being, you guys, you believers in social justice are usually even more left wing than I am, and I'm a fucking Bernie bro. But more to the point, you guys usually are the type of people who believe in all of the, bourgeoisie versus proletariat, fat cats versus the plebs type shit. And yet you can look at this situation, and because of the abstract morality of it, you can side with the corporation and the people working directly for the corporation over the actual audience, which I don't mean to tell you how to do your own business, but I'm going to do it anyway because you appear not to know. In the film space, the audience is the proletariat, if you insist on using that terminology, and the studios are the bourgeois. So if you are a good social justice believing person who also probably has some kind of Marxian or pseudo-Marxian economic views, somewhere in the Hegelian dialectic there, then allow me to once again remind you that the audiences are the working class and the studios with their billion-dollar fat cat mustaches are the bourgeois. Just to hold you to your own fucking standards.
Why should the plebs and wrong thinkers be in the same society as me, except under my feet and in the Philippines?
Yeah, I know, Dragon Turtle. It's funny because even when they are trying to be practical, even when they do tether it to some kind of economic or classist perspective, they still end up thinking in abstract terms more than they do in literal terms. It's the usual thing of they have a academically defined definition of the working class, but as and when the actual people within the working class don't abide by that academic definition, it's the people that are wrong and the abstract definition that holds water instead of the other way around. It's one of the most baffling things. Reality is only an authority insofar as it aligns with my abstract preconceptions. And if at any point my abstract preconceptions are at odds with reality, then the abstract preconceptions take precedence somehow. It's frustrating. Moving on.
Also, the reason why the seats to be empty is that all the movies aren't good. The reason why the seats are empty in those movies is because the movies aren't good.
Well, I mean, yes, that is also true.
Well, I'm trying to take the quality stance here, obviously. But we could get into that when you want it.
Yeah,
Anyway,
moving right along here.
it's difficult to generate any excitement about DC films, unless, of course, it's related to Batman. Fans love Batman, but not Batman as a supporting character in a Flash adventure or Batman as an unseen reference in a Harley Quinn heist film. They just want Batman.
No,
Hold on,
no.
hold on. I want to read the next part of this.
Hmm.
And if not him, then the Joker will do just fine. As it stands, Warner Bros. Safest future bets are the Batman Part 2 and Joker Filet du
Fale
Filet.
do. The madness of two. Yes. Um.
Hold on. Neither of which are part of the shared universe that makes up the upcoming DCU, and both reach beyond the core comic book movie. There you go.
Okay. No. Fuck this. Fuck this entirely, and fuck all of the ostensibly anti-SJW people who parrot this nonsense. It's not the it's not the normie cachet of the IP that sells the tickets. We learned this a fucking decade ago. Iron Man, and Captain America and Thor were not household names. The only household name in the original lineup of Avengers was the Hulk, and they didn't even have full rights to him because Universal was being an ass. My point is, as has been the case since the comic book genre moved away from being just a subgenre of the science fiction genre and moved into being considered its own genre in 2012, we've known that it's not the obscureness or non-obscureness of the IP that sells the ticket, it's the quality. It's how well can you convince the normies that wouldn't have given the comic version of this character a chance that they were wrong for doing so. I mean, it is worth noting. It is worth noting that the most successful um, financial movie in Phase 4 that was solely Marvel and not shared by Sony was Multiverse of Madness, which featured my boy Doctor Strange. And as much as my boy Doctor Strange is my boy, I'm not under any illusions that he was ever anything but an obscure character. Because and this is especially funny when you consider that the version of Doctor Strange in the MCU is not a very good version of Doctor Strange. But even a bad version of Doctor Strange can sell to the normies if you convince them that they were wrong for not liking the character. So no, it's not just Batman. It's not just the big three that sell movie tickets. Just like it's not just X-Men, um, X-Men, Spider-Man, Hulk, and um, Fantastic Four that sell Marvel movie tickets. It's any character can be good if you give them a fair shake and make a quality version of them out of it, or at least make a half-assed attempt to. Cough, cough, Doctor Strange. But that is one of the single most normative or yeah normium huffing copes I've ever heard. The idea that even though we spent the last 20 the last 10 years focusing almost exclusively on obscure characters that were not known to anyone outside of the comics for since 2012, all of a sudden it's oh my superhero fatigue and oh only the normie superheroes matter
Right.
all of a fucking sudden.
I actually also have something to say. 'Cause I guess relatively, I am sort of the Batman fan between the two of us.
I
And I
mean,
do.
you're more of a Superman fan than a Batman fan, but
I mean, I feel like I have a genuine like. I mean, yeah, I gravitate towards more Superman recently just because, not recently, but as I've gotten older. But I
mhm.
grew up with a lot of Batman stuff.
I mean, I did too. I mean, I almost broke the VHSs for Batman and Batman Returns as a kid
Yeah.
because I watched them so
Um,
often.
but I was gonna. God damn it, who was it? That there it is. To be fair, it is again. It does kind of result in that quality thing, like Joker and Batman, because they're really well made films. I think the IP sort of helps, but I think there. I don't know. It's what's the this thing can say this. They're well made and well crafted movies that even if you sort of took away the IP, they could still stand on their own. But I think it's somewhat not bolstered, but enhances the experience that is related to the.
Well, here's the thing, and to somewhat address what Dragon Troll said. No, I don't think it's just a novelty. I think one of the I think one of the translation errors between nerd and normie for the longest time was most normies didn't know about the characters that were interesting outside of the ones that everyone knows. Your Batmans, your Supermans, your Spider-Mans, your X-Men, etc. Most normies didn't know about characters like Doctor Strange. And when people who did know about Doctor Strange tried to sell people Doctor Strange, they sold them from the inside of a fanboy's perspective. They didn't know how to convince the normies that they were wrong for not giving those characters a chance. That's one of the reasons I love the superhero movie genre in particular, and the live action one especially, because it allows things that only existed in the pages of an obscure comic book that the average normie wouldn't pick up to be translated to a a medium that all normies, regardless of content, will be drawn to, movies. Um, and wouldn't you go right ahead and know it when normies are given the chance to become accustomed to these characters that they didn't know existed outside of the big normal ones? They often become more fond of them than they do of the normie ones. Because just because the normie ones are the most normal doesn't mean they're the meritocratically best ones. And the thing that keeps the normie out of the inside baseball heroes is the translation issue. The fact that they don't the fact that the normie wouldn't pick up a comic unless it had the big ones in it, and the higher concept ones are a tougher sell. But if you give the normies a chance to become accustomed to those characters, not only do they like them, a lot of them like them more than your Supermans, your Batmans, your X-Men, etc. Which is where I come in and go, I fucking told you all these years. I mean, for fuck's sake, in the Black Adam movie, um, even though Black Adam was played by Dwayne The Rock Johnson, who everyone likes, especially the normies, almost everyone who walked out of that movie and then proceeded to post a opinion online, because I can't speak for the non-online using normies, fair enough, but almost all of the normies I saw doing reviews of Black Adam, to a man, said the MVP was Dr. Fate. To which my brain went, yes, he has been this awesome all along. Y'all are late to the party. You should be ashamed of yourself. But even that shows it's not novelty, because I mean Doctor Strange and Doctor Fate are very, very similar. It's not it's not it's not quirky because Doctor Fate is very posh. He's not a jokester. Um, it is very much, some things just don't translate between normie and nerd when they're in comic form, but will when they're in movie form, especially live action movie form. Um, and when all other things are equal, when the normies are given a chance to become acclimated to the other characters, not only do they like them, they begin to prefer them over the other ones. Anyway,
Uh, on one hand, you can look at the poor turnaround for the past year of DCEU films as a lack of faith in the brand and draw on to fans to the point where even the good movies like Blue Beetle are getting brushed off. But the other, perhaps, the string of box office disappointments cast a lasso truth around audiences, revealing that when it comes to movies, DC fans en masse aren't broad fans of the characters in the universe itself, but as filmmakers. Okay. I have a few things to say first. And
Do they include "fuck you"? Because that's where I'm going. But
I mean, I was more or less going to imply it than actually outright say it, but
okay, you be the civilized one, and then I will come in and shit all over them for saying that stupid shit.
So looking at the I guess flops. Well, granted, I believe Shazam: Fury of the Gods didn't deserve the flop. More or less, there is kind of the issue of with the establishment of the DCU between James Gunn, the Gunverse, I guess, what we're calling it, right? A lot of the movies that were coming out after that announcement didn't really seem well. They didn't matter. Like they weren't going to. So, what would be the point of fans going to those movies?
Also, a lot of people were mad at what got left out of the Gunverse.
Yeah,
and we're trying to punish DC and Warner Brothers.
But also, again, it does kind of boil down to this whole quality thing because The Flash was not a good movie despite having good elements in it, but a lot of things, including Goodbye Giant Toys of that show. You're good. You don't have to apologize, man. You get it.
Do keep in mind though that all of these are recorded for posterity, so you can always revisit them afterwards.
Yeah, he said he'll catch the video later. Yeah, again, it does boil down to quality, and also a lot of outside factors made. Like I was not interested in The Flash, not just because of the main actor being a piece of shit, but also again, it does seem to matter.
Well, that, and even if Ezra Miller were not, the twinkish cousin of Rasputin there, even if he weren't that, and even if DC didn't, shoot themselves in the foot 5 ways from Sunday every 5 fucking minutes.
Yeah.
His version of Flash is not well liked, and was not well liked from the word go.
Yeah. Thank you, Don, for that. But also just given because we covered like all the trailers and stuff of the movie when it was coming out.
Not good marketing.
No good marketing. And also, honestly, a lot of the movies of the DC within the last year or so felt very cut down, very meddled with. I'll be fully honest, which is a big problem with Warner Brothers and DC.
They've been meddling with the Snyderverse, and they've been meddling since even before the soft reboot of the Snyderverse.
Yeah. And sorry, this I have two more things. So it's not really and don't get me wrong. I'm sure there is certain power because there is certain power when it comes to certain filmmakers working on certain projects. That is just that's just how it works.
I mean, Sam Raimi perfected or at least got Doctor Strange a damn sight closer to what he should be than Scott Derrickson did.
Just as us as fans of Guillermo del Toro, anything he makes, we are going to see. He's a day one, as some people would say.
I mean, his Hellboys are still even 20 years or almost 20 years on, and dozens of superhero movies in the whole. His Hellboy movies are still some of the best superhero movies, period.
Right. And So there is some truth there, and although I don't think that is the major selling point for DC, or should not be.
Okay.
Um, sorry, the Zack Snyder thing. I didn't know who Zack Snyder was until I saw Man. Now that I think about it, I saw his movies before, but I never really knew his name until that. That in this case, that's not a good thing because I kind of associate him with fucking up Superman.
Bad first impressions are bad. Yeah.
But and given like a lot of interviews and stuff we talking about, a lot of stupid stuff. I think his interpretation of a lot of superhero things, but the weird thing is, like with Marvel, and I don't like comparing, but because Marvel has been successful where DC has failed, I feel comparisons are somewhat necessary.
Well, that and DC constantly tries to either rip off Marvel or do the exact opposite of what Marvel's doing.
Yes, fair. Most of the time, specifically within like when they were going into like phase 2 and 3, it was not so much the directors or even like the producers that we were going to see the movie for. It was the characters.
The IP.
You know, it was the characters' names that, yeah, the IP that was carrying. However, with DC, it's this weird. For the early days of the DCEU, which I'm fully aware that it technically is not the proper term that they use. It was coined by a reporter.
But everyone uses it and everyone knows what we mean when we say it. Yeah.
Yeah. The Snyderverse, whatever you want to call it. It was very much carried by Zack Snyder and his vision. Even when he wasn't working on it, you had directors that did similar things, minus Patty Jenkins.
Because she was the beginning of the soft reboot, basically.
That and also kind of introducing more fantastical elements to the DC movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it still had some, obviously, we all know about the third act. It still has some of Zack Snyder's.
Yeah, it's still Snydered. That so should have. There are so many better ways that movie could have ended. But
yeah.
Anyway.
I'm actually, yeah. But it was slowly losing interest a lot of the times with the by the time Justice League was going to come around, and obviously the tragedy happened. I'm not going to make light of that because that is very messed up, and again, I do hope it does seem Zack Snyder has been able to move on from that tragedy, and all the power to him.
Yeah, I mean, whatever I may think of him intellectually or artistically, I have no ill will against him as a human being, and the only criticism I have for him in relation to this is it was a dick move of him to when the Geeks and Gamers types went out of their way to raise money for the suicide prevention charity on his behalf and for him, and were elated to work with him, and then Warner Brothers insisted that he disavowed them. However, I am willing to cut him at least some slack because I am 90% sure that is what happened. I am 90% sure that after he appeared on Geeks and Gamers, or just before he appeared on Geeks and Gamers, Warner Brothers basically put a gun to his career.
Right, and
instead of a gun with two ends to his career, but ching.
Yeah. So to cap this off. It was after that and the whole butchering and the Justice League cut deal, which was again kind of sealing the fate because again, the studio, the weirdest thing with Warner Brothers that was pretty evident throughout the decade of the DCEU was very much the major studio uh, interference that it was causing to, and just the drastic, like I guess you could say, overreactionary uh, deal.
They don't. They didn't ever have faith in their own IP or understand why it was valuable for its own sake. They
Yeah,
just wanted the Marvel money, and
yeah,
so anytime their movies took longer to build than they thought it should, like for example, BVS made 840 plus billion or $1 million, which is a fuck of a lot of money for one, and for two is better than most even superhero movies back then were making. But because they knew on paper Batman plus Superman fighting each other should be $1 billion concept just inherently, and should even be pushing 2 billion, because they knew well, in theory Batman plus Superman fighting each other um should be $1 billion or $2 billion idea. The fact that it didn't crack 1 billion made them break the fuck out. Um,
right.
and and the same is true for literally every time Warner Brothers or every time DC had a damn damn good financial slate, but didn't overperform like they expected it to.
Right,
And
and I
and
right,
the same is even true for Black Adam, because if they were smart, they would have been like, okay, it performed like a Phase One movie, and we're trying to basically push things in a new direction. That makes perfect sense. Instead of doing that, they went, well, it had The Rock in it, and it had Henry Cavill in it, and people say they like Henry Cavill. Why didn't it make more money? And so they scrapped it
right.
instead of having
Yeah,
a little bit of faith in their IP.
oh yeah, yeah. It was just like this whole constant shooting themselves in their own foot while also fucking themselves in the ass kind of deal.
Yes. And
Um,
for all that the Snyderverse was a shit show, and I'm glad that it did get soft rebooted with things like Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Suicide Squad 2, and etc. Um, for all that the Snyderverse was a shit show, based on the expanded editions and the Ultimate editions and the basically letting Zack release the movie he wanted to editions, I am 99.9% sure that had Warner Brothers just left well enough the fuck alone, it wouldn't have been nearly as bad as it ended up being.
I
Because
mean, sorry.
every every time they released a expanded edition or ultimate edition, or basically we're adding the half an hour that we cut for stupid reasons back in edition, it always performed better. And even the Snyder cut of Justice League, even though it was 4 bastarding hours long and was only part one, um, it was infinitely better than the Whedon League. So
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Like, I think we both said this many times, including when we did the review of Batman Justice. Um, while we don't agree with a lot of his vision for the DC universe, we can at least agree that artistic freedom and that he should have at least been allowed to make those.
and honestly,
It should not have been an interview.
if it wasn't constantly being, tossed back and forth as an actual universe unto itself, looking at all the Ultimate Editions and then the Snyder Cut, as a universe unto itself, it could have grown on people, and I think for a lot of people it did. Hence the Snyder Bros. Um,
Yeah, so
but
I do
because
want to put. Sorry,
go ahead.
there's just this thing. It's like my own personal thing. Like, well, again, I'm not like the biggest fan of the movies. I can at least respect the attempt that I guess there were good ideas in there. There are. There really are. My issues that I've always come with, I've mentioned this ad nauseum with like the Snyderverse, is either they go in a direction that doesn't logically make sense for the story or those elements that they are introducing and have created,
Hmm.
or they don't go far enough. You know,
Yeah, it's one foot in, one foot out of every single thing.
and I'm speaking primarily, not even like the complete studio interference. I am talking like the Ultimate Editions and and the 4 hour movie. There are good things in there. My issue is they're never fully utilized.
Which, I mean, to be fair, had he been allowed to go full carte blanche, and they weren't constantly, bouncing him back and forth, again, like I say, if Warner Brothers had the decency to actually let their fan base and their IP grow rather than just expecting, oh, it didn't make $1 billion, we must have done something wrong. If they had actually let the slow burn happen, like it did with the MCU in the first phase, they could have built on those bits and pieces that worked in the Snyderverse and in the Snyder style. Because that's the best part of the Snyderverse, was his visual style. For all the stupid writing decisions, and for all the stupid character decisions, and for all the stupid retconning decisions, if he had been the cinematographer or the director of cinematography or the screenwriter instead of the director, if they had gotten other people to direct and had him be the one who basically unified the visual style, that would have worked.
Anyway, shall we move on? We went on our fucking
Well, yeah, I didn't even get to do my rant yet.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. First of all, that last thing that you said. One, fuck you for implying that the MCU aren't movies. Two, the very thing that you're alluding to is the fucking problem. The fact that Zack Snyder and several people around Zack Snyder tried to outsmart the material in most cases. They wanted to be art house snobs. And when you take something that is supposed to be um upscale and whimsical and fun and enjoyable, and you grim dark it for reason of, oh, look at me, aren't I so artistic? Oh, look at me, aren't I so art house? It's going to fuck you, as it did here. That is actually one of the largest problems. Not that the audience sees the DC movies as films instead of a connected franchise, but that the filmmakers themselves, for the most part, really seemed to have, especially in the early days when it was the Snyderverse. Um, because that's the thing. It's not about you, directors. It's not about you, people behind the camera. It's about the IP. It's about the universe. It's about the characters. It's about things that predate and pre-establish you. And the longer it takes you to get that through your fucking heads, the more times we're gonna have to do this. And James Gunn, to ease off of Zack Snyder a little bit, James Gunn is doing the exact same fucking thing. He's trying to please not even actually himself, because I still maintain that if James Gunn was allowed to go, full tilt James Gunn and just go full obscure characters and bring the big three in later when other people are involved, um, it would be a more satisfying universe. But because he's splitting between pleasing himself and pleasing what he thinks the studios want and what the studios tell him they want, and also apparently, and again, this is a stupid, stupid decision, because in insane capitalistic enterprises, folks, you're supposed to please your customers. But yeah, between trying to please his own ego, trying to please the studios, and trying to fuck over the fans for God knows what reason, James Gunn is doing the exact same shit, up to and including jamming the entire Justice League all up inside your universe from the word go instead of building up a goddamn universe slowly over fucking time and treating each IP as though it individually matters. But yeah, but yes, that thing you're framing as a virtue that well Marvel movies are just products. DC movies try to be art. No, that's not what they are. One, two. Insofar as you're correct, you're wrong in a different way because you are framing the problem as though it is a virtue. Moving on.
When we look back at the history of most successful DC films and the ones that create passionate fan bases, there is almost always a distinctive filmmaker who can fit into auteur theory behind them. Richard Donner, Tim Burton, Christopher Nolan, Zack Snyder, James Wan, and Matt Reeves are all filmmakers with instantly recognizable styles and directorial traits.
Okay, fuck
Hold
you.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, technically, but because of this, I mean, Christopher Nolan,
Christopher Nolan succeeds despite himself, not because of himself. But that's neither here nor there. The point I was going to make is that the point I was going to make is if you want to say that about the successful DC movies, which one, it's disingenuous to throw in movies that existed before the DCEU. You could kind of get away with the Nolan movies because they're pseudo-related because Nolan helped on Man of Steel, which did not help, but in fact made everything worse, but I digress. But if you want to say that about the DCEU movies, you can just as easily say that about the most successful MCU movies as well. James Gunn, the Russo brothers, Sam Raimi. I'm trying to think of some other really successful ones where the style Taika Waititi. All of those are MCU movies where the MCU-ness of it all was backed up by the directorial flair of the filmmakers involved. In fact, the most unwell liked MCU movies are the ones that just vanish into thin air because they don't leave any impression. There's a reason why people even with the writing issues of Multiverse of Madness, people still prefer Sam Raimi's direction to Scott Derrickson's because Scott Derrickson basically vanished into the ether.
Sorry, I obviously don't mean to cut you off, but it is related to this. It was something I was going to say earlier. Again, it's not the directors. I think personally, their styles would work well with the characters that they are portraying. Obviously, I'm not saying it's a 1-to-1, but like James Wan with Aquaman, that works because he has a lot of. Yeah, I've never really seen a lot of his other
He has a lot of experience with horror movies, and for some reason, horror movie directors have a really good chance of transferring those skills into the action adventure or superhero genres.
Right.
It's funny because it doesn't usually work the other way. Like you don't get adventure or fantasy people being good at doing horror, but you do get people who are good at horror being good at superheroes or fantasy. But
yeah, that's right. Richard Donner, I have actually never seen anything else he's done besides the 70s system, the Christopher Reeve, so I have no thing on that. And Tim Burton with Batman, obviously, again, it's just like Tim Burton's like style with like the Beetlejuice before that and stuff. Like it's the
especially at like the height of his powers, which the Batman movies definitely were at the height of Tim Burton's powers.
Yeah, but like the work of certain directors blend well with certain characters. That's just how it works. And I'll be honest. I mean, certain exceptions. Most of these directors were fairly unknown before they worked on the certain IPs.
Yeah.
And again, I say with certain exceptions. Like with
I mean, obviously, in order for a director to work on a Marvel movie, they had to do something to distinguish themselves. Like Scott Derrickson had the Sinister movies and The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Taika Waititi had What We Do in the Shadows.
But yeah, the point is that the styles and traits more or less help with the combination of the IP that they are working.
Yeah, they refine or epicify the IP rather than supersede the IP.
Yeah.
And that's another big problem with the way DC handles things and the way a lot of other attempts to make a cinematic universe haven't worked. Because from the outside looking in, a lot of people don't seem to know that each character in the MCU is different. They don't seem to understand what makes Doctor Strange different from Tony Stark or makes Star-Lord different from either of them, and so on and so forth. But because what you need if you're going to make these characters successful is what makes them special, what makes them different, what makes them unique. You need to find someone who works particularly well with that specific IP, not just superheroes in general. Now, granted, Sam Raimi is rather famous for doing Spider-Man, but you know what? He's even more famous for doing Evil Dead, and Evil Dead works really, really insanely well as an aesthetic with Doctor Strange because Doctor Strange is dark and mystical and supernatural and shit. Granted, they should have known that from the off, and we could have gotten a better Doctor Strange 1, but I digress.
Yeah, it's just again, it's both true and untrue on the fact that yes, I do think some directors attached to certain projects help bolster that project, but I don't think it's necessarily the standard.
Well, no, it's the IP mixing with the style that makes it work. For example, Todd Phillips explicitly did Joker by mixing the backstory elements of Alan Moore's Killing Joke with Martin Scorsese movies like Taxi Driver, King of Comedy, and what was the other one? I keep wanting to say Falling Down, but I don't think that's right. What other movies is? But yeah, by mixing the backstory elements of The Killing Joke with a Scorsesean style, Todd Phillips was able to create one of the greatest comic book movies of all time.
Moving on?
Yep.
Hell, we could even add Joel Schumacher to that list as films have found their audience as of late. The fact that the lion's share of those filmmakers took on Batman has only cemented his place as the biggest draw for DC fans.
No, it's not the IP. It's not the character that is the only. Oh, okay, fuck you. It's not Batman that is the only draw to the DC universe. Just like it's not Hulk, X-Men, and Spider-Man, and Fantastic Four that are the only draws to Marvel. Again, it's the normie to nerd translation issue. If you give the normies a version of these characters in a medium that is more democratic, that doesn't require quite as much specialization. Because let's face it, collecting comics and reading comics does require a little bit of nicheness to you. Like, you have to be a certain kind of person to enjoy reading comics. But every motherfucker loves movies because movies are a more democratic medium. Hence why, when you give these characters a fair shot at becoming as well known as a Batman or a Superman or a Spider-Man or a Hulk, not only do they succeed, but they often become more preferable to the more normal ones. Because usually the reason why normies don't like characters like Doctor Strange is not because, well, the character's just too obscure, they're too niche, they're too random, they're too whatever. It's because they've never been shown those characters and they don't know that there are better characters in Marvel or DC than Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, Hulk, X-Men, etc.
I also,
Um,
sorry, it's just something that came to mind. And I could be totally wrong, and feel free to tell me I'm an idiot for this, but
mhm.
Batman, in certain regards, is to like a normie perspective, kind of the most easily accessible character to the DC universe.
Yeah, he's the most normie of all the normie characters. Even more so than Superman. And I know that annoys everyone, especially you, Brainstormer, but
No,
a
yeah,
lot of people don't get Superman. For
yeah,
as sad as that is, a lot of people just don't get Superman. They think he's
yeah,
naive. They think he's stupid. They think he's unrelatable. They think he's overpowered, etc., etc. And so none of which are true, by the way. But
yeah.
or at least
When I
only true in
no,
a certain context. But yeah.
when we go on that tangent because we are close to 2 hours and we still are on the first fucking article.
Oh dear.
To be fair, we really shouldn't have done tangents. But, you
Hmm.
anything else to say or?
Um, I had something and then I forgot it. Shit. Moving on.
I'm sorry. Sorry. Uh, it seems that this fact are not the necessarily characters themselves that really separates DC films, DC film, DC's film projects from the MCU. The MCU has created a system in which fandom is generated by characters and resurrected, for the most part, are secondary. The fans love Spider-Man, but they're not applying John Watts or expressing interest in his personal life. But DC's fandom is driven by filmmakers elevated to celebrity status, and as a result, trust is placed in their decisions. It's that rationale that led to Black Adam, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, and Blue Beetle, all of which were marketed as Marvel Light to draw out fandom.
Okay, fuck you.
Yeah, I
No,
have.
they
No, I agree. Yeah, fuck you. Like, it's so fucking dumb and stupid.
yeah,
Like,
no, they fucking weren't marketed as Marvel Light. They weren't marketed well to begin with, and that's the problem. Most
um,
most of the selling points for Black Adam had nothing to do, actually, funnily enough, with the character of Black Adam. A lot of the
well,
things people a lot of the things people liked out of the theater of Black Adam were the Justice Society, but the Justice Society were barely alluded to in the trailers. Had they been the focus, or better yet, if it had been a Justice Society movie and Black Adam was the villain of it, that would probably have been a better sell. But more to the point, Black Adam, for all that people might shit on and poo-poo it, is still the most successful DC movie after the Gunn announcement. It made 67 million in its opening weekend, domestically. Blue Beetle still hasn't managed to hit 67 domestically after 4 fucking weeks.
Although I will say Black Adam, I feel like a lot of people were more interested in that The Rock was playing it.
Yeah, it would. The draws for Black Adam go as follows: 1, Henry Cavill coming back; 2, The Rock playing a superhero; 3, Justice Society. In that order.
Yeah. Nothing really else. Moving
on. I felt like I had more to say, and now I fucking forgot it again. Yeah, move on.
Okay. The target audience already had versions of those movies in the MCU. The merits of representation that Black Adam and Blue Beetle offered, while commendable, are not a big enough draw in and of itself. So when Warner's put someone like Matt Reeves or James Gunn behind those titles, then there's a draw, and anything from unconventional casting choices or character alterations become easier for fans to not only embrace but defend. Okay, what the fuck? Okay, yeah, I could understand. Okay, James Gunn was Suicide Squad mainly because that thing was marketed pretty fucking well. Granted,
it was basically we're doing basically what Guardians did, but we're doing it in the DC universe.
Also R-rated.
Yeah. Which
which
helped considerably.
Yeah.
Also, Polka Dot Man and Ratcatcher 2 were amazing, and fucking Starro, man, I tell you what.
Dude, okay, I'm gonna be honest. I see no one really ever bring this up much, but the line before he died is that he was happy looking at the stars. Holy shit, that got me.
Yeah, I love the like childhood giddiness of like I'm a superhero, and then he. Why did Polka Dot Man have to die? You had David as Malchin. You should have kept him.
Shock value. Anyway, okay, so I have like a bunch of things to say about this. Actually, like, again, I mean, Matt Reeves, James Gunn, kind of understand that because they were somewhat big names at the time when making those movies. Still are kind of, because Matt Reeves he made the second and third film of the Planet of the Apes trilogy, which is an amazing.
He didn't do the first one. I thought he did the first one too.
No, I looked it up. It was somewhat different.
This I didn't know. Fuck.
Yeah, I thought for the longest time it's like a Mandela effect, really.
Who was the guy who did the first one then?
God, I looked this up a long time ago, and I'll look it up now. But what I was saying was, he does a very certain style. Granted, I think the style does change depending on the property you're using in certain aspects, but he just kind of, I guess, emotional depth that you don't really see a lot of in terms of modern movies.
Yeah, but here's the biggest problem about what they just said about the Matt Reeves and James Gunn thing. Even though Matt Reeves and James Gunn did an amazing job with their respective previous IPs, both of them are probably going to come back to bite DC in the ass. Because James Gunn, while he's good at being the outsider in a system, is apparently absolute dog shit at running the system based on his current choices. And here's the other thing. If Matt Reeves' Batman, if Robert Pattinson's Batman was the Batman of the DCEU or the Gunverse, that could work. But for some unbeknownst to everyone under the sun except possibly James Gunn reason, rather than just tell Matt Reeves to suck it up and deal with the fact that he's in the DC universe now, which is the sane choice, they opted to have two Batmen. And not only did they opt to have two Batman, they still went back to the older Batman well, and rather than start with Dick fucking Grayson or Jason Todd, the Batman, or even Tim Drake, the Robins that people, have an actual emotional connection to, they jumped the queue all the way to Damian Wayne, who even while he's more well liked now than he ever has been, he's still viewed as he's still viewed as an even more asshole-ish Robin than Jason Todd was. Previously, Jason Todd was the asshole Robin. Now it's Damian Wayne.
So it's Rupert Wyatt who did Rise of Planet Earth.
Did he do anything else that I would know about?
The Gambler in 2014 with Mark Wahlberg. A movie in 2019 called Captive State. Nothing else of really note. Well, the movie in 2008 called The Escapist.
Yeah, I have no point of reference for this guy. He has no face to me, basically.
Yeah, I got it. Anyway, thing I wanted to say was, because it does bring up merits of representation in Black Adam and Blue Beetle. So, okay, first off, I haven't seen Blue Beetle yet. Probably not going to see it in theaters. So, I'm gonna wait for like another month or so until it's on Max. But I don't know. It's honestly, it's not even like the biggest deal because to my recollection of Black Adam, again, feel free, because I know you've seen the video already. Like, representation is that like. Yeah, okay, speaking of Latino, I don't care that Blue Beetle, Jaime Reyes specifically, because that's the character, is fucking Hispanic. I like that he's actually I mean, yeah, he's very much like a Spider-Man head to me, sort of. But actually has a grander mythos than Spider-Man, sort of. It's not, well, okay, not Spider-Man now, but Spider-Man starting now, I guess. But yeah, it's just like, I don't know. I feel like they're just talking talk at this point because I don't really feel like there's no real cohesiveness currently.
Okay, and now here's my go at it. One, the reason why the representation worked in Black Adam is because it wasn't ideological in nature. It wasn't a BLM stump speech type of representation. It wasn't critical race or critical, it wasn't critical gender. It wasn't social justice. The representation in Black Adam had nothing to do with social justice, even if you could call it representation. And pretty much the only diverse main character, if you want to call it that, in Black Adam was Black Adam himself. And of course, everyone coming out of the theater said that that the standout character was Kent Nelson, played by Pierce Brosnan, who played Dr. Fate. And he was the old white guy, the old British white guy. So there's that. As for Blue Beetle, honestly, the hyperfixation on representation is what fucked it, because a large percentage of the Hispanic population don't like this pandering bullshit. They're all like the Chinese, who also don't like this pandering bullshit, and the hyper focus on Hispanic is probably one of the reasons why Blue Beetle made 25 million in its opening fucking weekend.
Don, can you repeat the first thing you said in that whole sentence?
I said the thing that made Black Adam work,
No,
the
no,
thing
no.
that made Black,
The thing after that.
the thing about Blue Beetle,
Yeah.
the hyperfixation on representation is probably what fucked, at least partially what fucked the Blue Beetle. Because the Hispanic community does not, the Hispanic community, much like the Chinese community, really doesn't like the social justice pandering, and it might be one of the reasons why.
Hello.
Yeah, might be one of the reasons why Blue Beetle made only 25 million in its opening weekend. Now, granted, it's had a better series of drops from week to week than your average bomb, because I think largely it's a pretty decent movie, all things considered. But even so, between the Warner Brothers constantly shitting the bed, the movie's own marketing focusing on the Batman is a fascist bullshit, which fuck you, and the Hispanic thing that doesn't appeal to Hispanics,
Well,
probably
okay.
is why it underperformed as massively as it did.
I have a question
Mm-hmm.
about Blue Beetle in terms of representation.
Mm-hmm.
Does it represent Hispanic culture in a way that kind of delves into it, or is it just fairly bare bones, skin deep, stereotypical?
It's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Like, the movie could have easily been done without it, and nothing would have been lost. But they
Okay.
also don't. They also do focus at least a little bit on the family angle, and the characters' personalities take it through a lot. There's
Oh,
also a scene where I believe the grandmother of the family, just straight up guns down several of the villain henchmen people with the machine gun.
anyway, god damn it, we have been you say the same thing. Okay, moving on or anything else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
The future of the DCU relies on Warner's awareness that much of this particular fan base is less interested in cinematic universes and cameos, and more invested in filmmakers with distinct, sometimes even controversial visions. Okay, hold on. Actually, no, wait. Let me read a little bit more, just so we have a little more to talk about and get through this a little bit more faster.
Mhm.
Okay. Those are films that fans will rally behind, but hopefully in a well-adjusted way that doesn't make you think you're going to see them inserting themselves into the director's family photos. James Gunn certainly seems like a filmmaker who can deliver an inspired take on Superman with Superman Legacy. He has a built-in fan base, which truthfully matters a lot less to general audiences in the grand scheme of things. Most folks just want to see a good movie, and if that is delivered upon, a new fan base can emerge. Okay, I have a few things to say.
Please.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, you know what? Actually, I will wait on. I constantly keep sending you off. So, please.
Okay. So, one, stop blaming the fans for shit the studios did. You don't get to deliberately piss people off and then complain when they're deliberately pissed when they act as though they've been deliberately pissed off. Two, I don't even remember what the first thing was now. Shit. Because I was going in reverse order, but I can't remember what the first sentence was. The thing that set me off.
You want to reread it? So,
Yes, please.
okay. Future of the DCU relies on Warner's awareness that much of the particular fan base less interested in cinematic universes and cameos, and more invested in filmmakers who can think sometimes in controversial decisions.
Okay, now I remember. Okay.
Okay.
Once again, you are diagnosing, or you are trying to treat the problem with the thing that caused the problem. It's not the filmmaker's job to be all artsy fartsy and snobby. It's the filmmaker's job to disappear and serve the IP they're working with. If they started doing that, it actually would lead to more good things for DC. Stop trying to make the DC universe the categorical opposite of Marvel just to spite them and spite the fan base. People don't actually care about the filmmakers. They do actually care about the IP. And one of DC's problems, and the reason why it constantly fucks them in the ass, is because they keep trying to make these artsy fartsy pieces of crap that nobody wants, and yet not learning from the things people actually do want. They don't. They don't pay. They don't pay attention to what the fans want, and when the fan base goes out of their way to tell them what they want, the people behind the studio basically go out of their way to spite the fan base, and then they wonder why they keep getting diminishing returns from their fan base. Unsurprisingly, when people get told over and over and over again, you're immoral, you're scum, you're a toxic fan, you need to fuck off, you need to grow up, you need to this, that, and the other, eventually they just go, well, fuck you, I'm going to leave and take my ball and go home then, and take all my money along with me.
Yeah.
And then the next movie eventually goes down in terms of profits, and Warner Brothers is left going, wait, we told the fan base to fuck off. Why didn't they continue showing up? Morons.
I have something really good. Oh yeah, okay. So I did want to break it down. Obviously, the first thing was okay. In some ways, I do that again, like the Snyder Bros. Sure, but I disagree with the whole less interest in cinematic universes and cameos. Granted, I do think cameos, as of late, are what's the word?
Superficial. They're not done well.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
acting like they are enough by themselves, and like they're some sort of magic bullet, when in actuality they're supposed to just be the connective tissue that connects two things people care about.
right. And uh, the greatest, most recent example I can think of is the Flash movie.
Oh right, the end scene with all the cameos that everyone lost their shit over for no reason.
Kind of contributed nothing, and also the super poor, terrible CGI that
Well, yeah,
recreation.
it also pissed me off because here's the thing. For me, cameos aren't enough to make a movie. For
No, yeah, I
me,
agree.
it only matters if those cameos actually amount to something. Like, for as much as I got annoyed at the hyperfixation on the multiverse in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness instead of the madness part, for as much as that annoyed me, at the very least they actually had the characters. They actually had the characters in the Illuminati: Professor X, Black Bolt, Captain Carter, Mr. Fantastic. They at least had them do things. And in No Way Home, for all the problems I had with that movie, at least when Toby and Andrew showed up, they actually did things. And when Otto and Norman showed up, they at least actually did things and were actually instrumental. They actually contributed to the fucking plot. Having Christopher Reeve's corpse, dusted off using CGI and showing up for literally 2 seconds contributes nothing. It adds nothing, and it yeah, and it doesn't, and it actually comes off more as an insult to the character by not having him do or contribute anything to the plot. The only cameo of actual substance in that movie was Michael Keaton. And the problem with Michael Keaton is you would have been better off using Kevin Conroy, because I hate to break it to you, Gen Xers, but y'all aren't the target audience for movies anymore. Now it's the millennials. And for as much as I did love Michael Keaton's Batman and almost broke the VHSs on both Batman and Batman Returns, I associate that same Batman with Kevin Conroy as well, because they're supposed to, at least, if not be in the exact same universe, be in very similar universes, both stylistically and otherwise. And that's why Joel Schumacher was a shit stain, but that's neither here nor there. But had you done more with Kevin Conroy, that probably would have gotten you a better result. Or hell, even as much as I just defended Conroy over Keaton, even my Batman is not the Batman to most people anymore. A lot of people in Brainstormer generation grew up with Christian Bale, even though, let's face it, Batman was not the star of those Batman movies. It was usually the villains.
Well, I was also going to say the Batman cartoon in 2004.
Yeah. Although, let's face it, that was Kids WB trying their damnedest to basically rip off the animated series without actually ripping it off.
I like it. It's a good show.
No, it's good. I'm just saying, like, even most people that liked it, like I loved it. I really did enjoy it. I especially enjoyed that they towards the end were setting up the Justice League, and I kind of wish we had gotten the Justice League of that universe spinoff. But even so,
it's kind of my first introduction to Batman.
Yeah, you're like I say, you're 4 years behind me, and even I was probably not a latecomer, because of course when I was younger, I watched the animated series. I watched the Paul Dini vs. Tim shows like a motherfucker. But in terms of, I believe the animated series started in '93, which was 2 years before I was even fucking born.
Right. I do want to say, actually no, never mind. Sorry, I don't. I do want to get to my other 2 points, I guess, before we move on.
Mm-hmm.
Again, okay, I guess I was kind of dumb. Well, actually, no, the cinematic universe thing. People want to see a connected universe in terms of movies or TV shows or whatever. The issue, again, is how it's brought up, how it is connected.
The connections actually have to matter and actually have to amount to something.
Yeah. The issue is when everyone was starting to do those cinematic universes, like the Dark Universe. What other ones were there in 2010?
I can't quite remember.
The Dark Universe most, because that is a clear example of how.
Well, yeah, Universal tried 3 or 4 separate times to try and get a Dark Universe off the ground. There was the one that featured the Mummy, the reboot of the Mummy, but there was also Dracula Untold and Victor Frankenstein. Yeah. Victor Frankenstein is probably the best of the 3, by the way, but it didn't amount to anything either.
I like Dracula Untold.
I didn't hate it. I did find it silly that they kept. The biggest problem with the Dark Universe is they didn't make a horror themed horror movie cinematic universe. They tried to turn horror movie monsters into superheroes.
Yeah. Which honestly, I don't think Universal should have done, but I think could have worked.
Yeah,
Anyway.
no, the MCU should have fucking done it. Is what they should have done. They already have Moon Knight, Man Thing, and Werewolf by Night set up. Honestly, the original plan apparently was going to be have James Gunn handle the cosmic universe. This was, of course, before James Gunn lost his job. But the original plan was going to be have James Gunn handle the cosmic side of the universe, and then the second plot after the Infinity Saga was going to be the Eternity Saga, which was going to focus a lot on cosmic entities and supernatural entities, which would have featured people like Werewolf by Night and so on. But because of COVID and because of the James Gunning, the firing of James Gunn and everything, which was still wrong, even though James Gunn is kind of an idiot now. Because of all that, they had to restructure, and so they went multiverse instead. That is going to go down in history as one of the single stupidest and most poorly thought out decisions they ever made.
Right. So, but again, it's like if they're done well, people want more. The issue is again, what it always boils down to is quality.
Well, that, and also, don't jump the gun. Don't try to set up an entire universe in the first movie. Make each individual movie as self-contained and good as it can be, and then once you've got them on the hook, once each movie is successful enough to justify a franchise, and that's the other thing, you can't expect the phase 1 of your universe to make $1 billion each. You simply can't expect it. Look back at phase 1 of the MCU. The most successful one was Iron Man 1. That made like $600 million. Then Thor 1 made $450. Captain America 1 made 327, I believe. Was that the Hulk? And the Incredible Hulk was the least successful of the bunch with damn near with just barely 300 million, I think. But either way, you have to be willing to accept a middling or even minor result and take the time to build it up. Because here's the other trick. You actually have to care about the IP. That is one of the things that made the MCU successful, was Kevin Feige. The fact that Kevin Feige was a massive fucking nerd, who not only was in and of himself a massive fucking nerd, but one of the things that made the early MCU more successful than the current MCU is when they brought in someone new, whether it was an actor or a director or a writer or whoever, they had them read the fucking comics because the IP was important. For some reason, the MCU has stopped doing that, and surprise, fucking surprise, it has bitten them squarely in the ass. But whatever.
Okay, so we have 2 hours.
Yeah, we're gonna have to move the Rotten Tomatoes one to next week.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Okay, we're almost done with this. So, you know?
Yep.
As a filmmaker, Gunn has earned a lot of trust, but for fans, both old and new, stick around after.
Bless you.
Oh, God. Okay, sorry. Let me start over. As a filmmaker, Gunn has earned a lot of trust, but for fans, both old and new, stick around after Legacy. He's going to need more than a blueprint for the future. He's going to need a league of filmmakers in whom audiences can put their trust. I mean, okay, this is actually a point I was going to bring up here.
Mm-hmm.
With like whole controversial visions or whatever, like while I don't think it's the main driving point for a movie, I think having filmmakers with distinct visions, Hold on, Don.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I don't. While they can put their own flair and sound, like some of them, what I was talking about with James Wan earlier, still put their own flair and style to it. but still understand the core and keep intact the core of the IP.
Yeah, and that's the sort of nuanced position I was going to bring up. Was it's not about vision, it's not about ego, it's not. I'm gonna borrow a line from Doctor Strange here. They're like, it's not about you, directors. Your job, just like with the comic writers, is to be a steward and a servant of the character and the IP. You are not the selling point. Whichever character you're in, whichever style suits the character you're using is the selling point. That's one of the reasons why it is so helpful when you take an IP and you match it with a style that works. Like turning the backstory parts of the Killing Joke into a Scorsese movie, or turning Doctor Strange 2 into a Lovecraftian horror comedy for kids in the style of Evil Dead. Um, those kind of things are what makes it work. It's not about you, it's about you serving the IP. And yes, you can bring a little bit of your unique flavor to the thing because that's why we want you. It's to bring your unique flavor to this and basically season the dish. Add your flavor to the dish that basically it's like cooking in a restaurant. You obviously the chef wants to add their own unique touches and their own unique flavor um to the dish they're making. But if the person looking at the menu, if the actual customer wants a freaking burger or a piece of fried chicken, you can't serve them a a deconstructed wonton platter or vegan or like mushrooms in place of chicken or something. I.e., you're not supposed to stand out as the chef. You're supposed to make the best possible version of your rendition of whatever the dish is. That's why there are things like menus. And the same is true for cinema. You're not
Yeah.
supposed to you're not supposed to you're not supposed to take Doctor Strange and use him as a weapon. You're not supposed to take the IP and use it as a weapon. You're supposed to pick an IP that suits you to some degree to begin with, and then make the best version of your take on it. Moving on.
Mhm. Uh, Warner Brothers isn't going to win back everyone, and it would be a mistake, one that the studio made in the past with the DCEU.
Bless you
Even
again.
even think they can. Attempting to make films for everyone resulted in the theatrical cut of Justice League 2017, a film for no one. And it will take time to rebuild DC fandom to unify the parts that can be unified and simply let the rest go. Okay, so I'm going to anything.
Again, stop framing it as the fandom's problem when the studios. Again, basically, what you're basically describing is someone insulting someone to their own face, and then when the person they're insulting takes their insult personally or takes their insult as an insult, you bitch at them and you act as though the first person in the interaction didn't say anything. It's not the fandom's fault if they have conflicted or angry reactions to what the IP is doing. Did it ever occur to anyone at Warner Brothers or in Hollywood in general? Because this is the other thing. For as much as Hollywood loves focus groups, you would think that the internet would be their personal gold mine. Because the internet is the ultimate focus group. You can get both the most broad strokes of what people think on the internet, but also you can get individual people going it to great lengths describing what they liked or didn't like about something. You would think that to someone in Hollywood who loves focus groups, the internet would be the ultimate focus group. But instead, for whatever reason, the industry goes out of its way to spite the internet at every conceivable turn, not realizing that a large percentage of their audience is on the other end of those computers. Which is in and of itself kind of an assholeish thing. You shouldn't be okay with just leaving bits and pieces of your fandom out to dry. You should be going to them and saying, "What are we doing wrong? What could we do to make things better?" Because sure, every great now and again you'll get trolled. You'll get a Morbius, or you'll get a Rick and Morty Szechuan sauce incident. You'll get people fucking with you. Or you'll simply get people who don't know what the fuck they want, or the things they want wouldn't translate well into movies, or whatever the fuck. But for every one of those, for every Morbin Time or Rick and Morty Szechuan sauce incident, you get the occasional one. You know, for every one of those, you get you get 2 or 3 or 5 Jokers, or Sonic, or the Sonic franchise, or Super Mario Brothers. I.e., sometimes, yes, you will get trolled by the internet. You will get fucked with by the internet. But for every one of those, you'll get 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 ones where the audience will look at you trying, at least. They'll look at you actually putting in the effort and putting that effort into somewhere regarding the right places, and they will reward you for it. Like, for example, the Sonic movie was going to bomb horribly. It was absolutely going to be one of the worst bombs in history. But then the guy behind the Sonic movies looked at it and said, "Well, obviously that's not going to please the fans. I'm going to insist the movie gets pushed back a year so that we can fix it and make a movie the fans would actually like to see." And you know what? The fans responded to that by making it very successful. Granted, it could have been more successful, sure, but it's certainly more successful than it would have been had had they just left it as it was. Look at Mario. Um, the entire film intelligentsia class had a complete and utter hatred for that movie. They called it every nasty name in the book. They called it ludicrous fan service. They called it childish. They called it irritating. They called it every unpleasant name in the book. Made 1.3 billion fucking dollars because the audience is the one you should be listening to, because the audience are the ones who make things make money. Same thing with Joker. The film intelligentsia class thought the Joker was immoral, was some kind of incel, creating terrorist piece that was going to lionize terrible ideas and shit. But the audience, in fact, multiple vectors of the audience looked at it and went, "This speaks to me on levels that aren't political, that aren't specific, that aren't narrow, but that are more broad and philosophical." And so everyone came away from Joker with something to recommend it. The traditionalists had, The Decay of Society to recommend it. The left-wingers had The Breakdown in Social Services and the Treatment of Mental Health to recommend it. The men's rights advocates had, the usually untalked about victimization of men to recommend it. And the centrists and the civility mongers had the Breakdown in Civil Discourse to recommend it. Everyone had something to recommend, and even outside of that, everyone enjoyed the mixture of Scorsese's style of filmmaking with the backstory elements, the Killing Joke, in the style of King of Comedy. So, far be it from me to make this point, Hollywood, but yes, sometimes you will get trolled, sometimes you will get fucked with, or sometimes the internet will simply have bad ideas. But honestly, the billion-dollar success stories of things like Mario and Joker, and the much better success stories of things like Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2, are worth putting, are certainly what do you call it? I don't know. I had a idea and now I lost part. Oh yeah, they are what you will get if you persevere through the occasional Morbin time or Szechuan sauce incident. The Szechuan sauce incident and the Morbin times are worth putting up with on occasion for the sake of the Marios and Jokers and Sonicses. If you grow up, stop moralizing, stop listening to people who insist you moralize, and realize your job, like it has always been, is to make good quality material that pleases your fucking audience and gives your audience as
Okay.
much as possible either what they want or something better than what they want.
Moving on.
Or something equivalent. Yeah, moving on.
Everyone is going to be sold and expecting $1 billion Superman film out the gate would be absurd, but of course, we've been down that road before. Perhaps the simplest lesson for this current regime comes from the film that spearheaded the DC Cinematic Universe in the first place, Dark Knight. Sometimes people deserve to have their faith rewarded.
It's funny people it's funny how people just sort of hand wave this away, but keep in mind folks that Man of Steel actually made more than 100 million less than Doctor Strange 1 did. There is no force on this earth that should make that reasonable. Um because you see Superman is a much, much, much more well-known character and more well-liked character, at least in theory, than a character like Doctor Strange. But because Man of Steel shit the bed so badly, it actually ended up making less than Doctor Strange.
Right.
So don't let yourselves become resigned to that, Warner Brothers. If your Superman movie or your Batman movie makes less than an obscure character like Doctor Strange, that is a sign that you done fucked up. That is not a sign of, well, maybe people just don't like Superman. No, that's a sign that you fucked up. And in a sane world, you'd be doing a lot better.
All right, last paragraph. That means often consistently not changing directions every time some critics and certain segments of fandom become blinded by nostalgia or throw tantrums and the story isn't told the way they wanted it to be. Okay, so I was with them until that last fucking part.
Yeah, once again, if you go out of your way to pick. Go ahead.
Just quick thing. One, I totally agree. Like DC had this, like Warner Brothers had this weird, and I brought this up earlier, the super reactionary thing of constantly shifting direction, trying to please the audiences every fucking movie without having a clear goal in mind.
Well, it didn't make
Two,
$1 billion, so I guess we fucked up.
just chasing trends and shit instead of setting them. And okay,
Or being fucking patient.
right, kind of both. But and the last part, which segments of the fandom being blinded by nostalgia or throwing tantrums when the story isn't told the way they want it to be. Okay, the issue, and I take this somewhat personally because I feel like I am someone that was very hypercritical or just very critical of like BBS, Man of
Man
Steel,
of Steel.
yeah, and like those early movies because they are very much they go against a lot of the core ideas that are been well established in the DC universe for decades at this point. And one, I wouldn't call them tantrums, mind you,
Yeah,
but
you go out of your way to anger people, and then when they react angrily, you bitch at them.
yeah,
Basically, is what you're doing there.
yeah. But again, like to quote Dolan, Man of Steel hit the fan in terms of characterization and overall philosophy of Superman. Um,
Yeah, they turned a principled idealist into a Randian objectivist character.
for for effectively shock value.
And because
Is
Zack
what they
Snyder didn't understand or didn't care about Superman.
Yeah, but that's all I have to say. Really. So please, go ahead.
But yeah, okay. Once again, I'm gonna hold Hollywood to the same standard as every other fucking business in existence. Um, guys, your audience is actually entitled to getting what they fucking pay for. So yes, you don't get to morally lecture your audience when like that whole oh people came to our movies thinking they were gonna get what they paid for. How dare they? That's so entitled. Fuck you. If that was literally any other business or any other industry, you would understand exactly what you did wrong there. Let's say you go to a restaurant. You go to a restaurant, you sit down at a restaurant, you order your favorite food. And instead of getting your favorite food, you you get crap on a plate that's labeled as being your favorite food. And then when you complain to the waiter or complain to the chef that this isn't anything like what you ordered or like what the basic idea of the thing you thought you were ordering um is, they bitch at you for being quote unquote entitled. That's what you just did. Your audience, okay, are the people you are trying to please. Fuck the critics entirely. Fuck them all. If the critics don't like a movie, but the audience does like a movie, what will happen? The movie will make a fuck ton of money, will be well regarded in retrospect, and will probably become a cult classic, at, even after making, oodles and oodles of money. But if the critics love something that the audience hates, what will happen? The critics will be regarded as stuck-up toffs or posh cunts. The audience will hate it, and therefore the movie will bomb because it will not make money, and it will eventually be regarded as a giant ass fucking mistake. Which of these is more preferable, Warner Brothers? Which of these is more preferable, Hollywood in general? Would you rather actually please the people who are paying your salaries, or would you rather, you know, wind up in the poorhouse because you thought the moral high ground and the intellectual high ground was so abjectly superior, and you thought your audience was so immoral that you told them all to GTFO? Because here's the thing. If you go out of your way to tell your audience to go fuck themselves over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, eventually, either that audience is going to get very, very, very fucking vocally angry with you, and that's going to be your toxic fandom, quote unquote, and or eventually, if that persists even after the audience has made it clear that this is the exact opposite of what we want, give us what we paid for, you cunts. Um, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of that one SpongeBob episode. I believe it was called As Seen on TV. It was the sister episode to Can You Spare a Dime? Do you remember that episode?
Yeah, I barely watched SpongeBob.
It was the episode where Mr. Krabs made a Krusty Krab commercial, and SpongeBob got it in his head that he was a big fancy movie star as a result of this. And because of his pretentious blowhardery, the audience was, or the customer was getting more and more and more upset. And Squidward had to be the one who talked sense and go, maybe you should go in the kitchen, grab some patties, and give these people what they came here for. And of course, in his deluded sense of justification, when he accidentally ended up doing that, SpongeBob thought that this was different than being a fry cook somehow. That's what this is. That is exactly to the letter what this is. They think their job is to be artists instead of to provide um something that the audience is going to enjoy. And when they accidentally make something that the audience does enjoy, they have to pseudo intellectualize it and make it fit within their preconception of I'm I'm not I'm not serving customers, I'm an artist. Um and usually that either ends up with them succeeding for completely different reasons than they think they succeed, or eventually crashing and burning. That's exactly what they're doing. When you fail to give people what they paid for, and people are understandably angry with you for doing so, you call that them being entitled. Even though in literally every other industry, you pay for a product, you expect to get that product, and if the product, even if the product like malfunctions or breaks down or breaks 5 seconds after you get it home, most people would feel ill used by that. But somehow the audience of movies or TV shows aren't allowed to feel ill used when they pay for a movie based on a certain IP, and the movie in question shits all over the certain IP or thinks that it's immoral somehow to serve the IP. Moving on.
That means decisiveness and let filmmakers be more than simply adapt the familiar, but challenge what we think we want from these movies and what we think we know about these characters. You see, actually, no. Hold on.
Yeah, you need to stop there.
Yeah,
because that's exactly what I was just referring to, and that's exactly the fucking problem.
Yeah,
How about go ahead.
I mean, speaking as a writer, specifically my style of writing is take an idea, and kind of play it at a certain angle that makes something a little more fresh and entertaining. So I could somewhat understand it, but the issue, the actual reasoning behind this specific thing is more or less the foregoing of the essential core of certain IPs that are being adapted. It's not even an adaptation at that point. It's effectively
the idea is we have to fix this IP because the IP itself has no value and is not good enough as it is. To which my response is, and this is what I was about to get into, how about you guys see if you can do the simple version correctly first, and then if you can successfully make a good version of the simple, straightforward version, then maybe you get trusted enough to fiddle around and fuck around with it. But that is how that works. First, you successfully deliver the best version or a good version of the straightforward, linear, giving people what they want version. And then, once your sensibilities have proven their worth, once you have successfully managed to deliver on the basic gist of what people want, because that's the thing, I don't object to that idea either. But if you're doing that instead of giving people what they want, rather than in addition to giving people what they want, that is exactly when you can go fuck yourself. Because that is the problem. It's the idea is the idea essentially is the IP itself isn't good or doesn't have anything to contribute to the world. So we have to fix it. We have to zhuzh it up. We have to make it capital A art instead of giving people what they fucking want. And this is the problem. You're treating mass market art that is meant to cater to some kind of audience, art that is meant to be judged by other people's eyes and minds. You're treating mass market art or populist art or product art like it is modern art or art house art or museum art. Those aren't the same fucking thing. In those contexts, in the context of a museum or in the context of an art gallery, the artist can make something that appeals to themselves and only themselves. But usually, when the artist does that with something that appeals to themselves and only themselves, they don't expect the same cachet as a major IP. That is the price you pay. You can either play like an art house cunt, or you can work with IPs that people actually care about. You rarely, if ever, can do both. The people who can do both are the people who should do both. Because again, if you can successfully prove that you can play on easy mode, then and only then do I trust you to proceed to hard mode. When you can give people what they want first, or what they want in addition to something else, then we can have the conversation about about you being better than the audience and you knowing better than the audience and giving people more than what they want. But if you want to morally and intellectually grandstand over people first and foremost, and the IP is nothing but a hindrance or an inconvenience to you, then you belong in the art gallery or the museum. You do not belong in the realms of public art, because public art is meant to be catering to someone other than the artist's own ego. And wouldn't you go right ahead and know it, when movies are made for the artist or the artist's own ego, the independent movies that, aren't an IP, usually they end up bombing in obscurity because no one wants that shit. Because let's face it, especially artists who are born in the modern art school of thinking are pretentious cunts who don't believe in things like value, who don't believe in things like quality, and who actively shun those concepts whenever they possibly can. And so, unsurprisingly, art house movies make a lot less than blockbusters. So your solution is not, let's put the same level of effort into the blockbusters as we do into my favorite art house pet project. Your option is, let's take the major IPs and turn them into art house projects, and if anyone has a problem with it, they're just morons, pseudo-intellectuals, or immoral somehow. Instead of, I'm the asshole for taking something that someone loved and deliberately making a mockery of it because I didn't think there was any value there to begin with.
Okay. Oh, I still don't say a lot. Comments. All right. Give me a second to. We'll finish this article, Soka, and then we'll read your comments. Okay. That means decisiveness and letting filmmakers do more than simply adapt. All right. Now, did I read that?
I don't think so.
That means decisiveness, letting filmmakers do more than simply adapt the familiar but challenge what we think.
Oh, yes, you did. Yes, you did, because that was the thing that we were just going over.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. The DCU has to do more than make fans believe a man can fly. It has to make them believe that this time there's a willingness to take course and see that flight to its destination. Only then will the DC film fans be found again. Okay, I mean, yeah, not technically wrong, but everything that came before is kind of.
No, in the context of this article, they're being pretentious cunts again. Because, okay, again, the first and foremost thing you have to make people believe is that they can trust you not to fuck them over. That is the quintessential nature of not just art, not just products, not just stuff, but capitalism in general. The basic trust that has to exist between the purveyor of goods and the person purchasing the goods is such that you have to have this basic level of trust between the person buying and the person selling. The person selling has to be trusted by the person buying that they won't be fucked over. And if the seller in question has a reputation of being someone who not only fucks over their customers on purpose, deliberately, for their own shits and giggles, but actually thinks they have some sort of moral high ground or moral grandstanding to do as a result of this, that person is not going to stay in business. Period. That's the biggest problem with Hollywood right now. They think they are in the moral right for fucking over their fan base. And when their audience understandably reacts negatively to not getting what they paid for, they think their audience is being childish, immature, moronic, or immoral. Instead of, they are the problem for breaching that basic transactional sanctity of anyone who's ever bought anything. If your audience doesn't think they can trust you or doesn't expect to get the products they pay for when they buy from you, it's unsurprising that they eventually stop fucking buying from you. If someone walks into your store to buy an umbrella and you hand them a stripper's pole instead because it's sexually avant-garde or some shit, unsurprisingly they're not going to buy from you anymore because, bitch, it's raining and I need a fucking umbrella. Well, if someone goes to you for a piece of art, especially related to a specific IP that is already pre-established and not theirs to meddle with, and they meddle with them anyway, then unsurprisingly, people are at first going to be very, very angry with you and going to inform you that you fucked up something that they loved and something that they cared about, and then eventually just going to give up and go the fuck away and leave you to flail impotently in the darkness.
Okay. Wow. So you have said a lot. Okay. God, where do I start?
I guess start after Dragon Turtle left, and we can go down the list. Or no, Chrono came in then, and sorry, we were too busy addressing the article. We couldn't deal with the comments, guys.
Okay. I'll just start here. You can't just subvert the audience like how Disney and all the movies have done. Like legit, Hollywood might like that, but the entire global audience doesn't like that shit. Especially those that grew up with the older stuff. Hell, even most younger Star Wars fans don't like Rey. They like Finn more than Rey. That legit showed in the freaking toys and stuff. Star Wars toys and stuff is legit sitting in things and shit all over the globe. I mean, when you legit make a show out of fucking over people's expectations, people don't want that shit. Like they legit ruined a huge number of IPs. Okay, we can stop there because that's other things, but okay, like that's all in itself. So
Mm-hmm. I guess now just move to the trailers because we don't have nearly enough time to deal with the Rotten Tomatoes one today because that's almost as long as the DC article that we just got done doing.
yeah.
At the very least, that takes up a slot for next week, which is good because September is always a bit of a slump because we're in between news cycles.
Okay. So I think I sent them right.
The trailers were both you. I only sent the Rotten Tomatoes article this week.
Yeah, to be fair, I kind of very lucky because uh, yeah, I think you're really right about there being like kind of a dead zone for like news stuff in terms
Yeah,
of like
it's stuck between news cycles. It's after the summer news cycle, before the fall news cycle.
right. So yeah, this is the Red Band trailer for Gen V season one. We've already talked about it before. Um, anything beforehand that we need to talk about, or
No, not really. Although I'm gonna have to disconnect and come back in because it's doing the buffering thing to me. I can't actually see it.
okay, okay. Uh, what do you mean about fall, Soka? Not sure I get that.
And we still have 2 years to wait. Even if the writers' strike didn't happen, we would still have 2 years to wait before the Gunverse would even get off the ground. God only knows how far back it's going to be delayed with the writer's strike and the actor's strike going, because those were scheduled for 2025, and they're not going to make those deadlines now, or at the very least they're going to have to move them pretty soon. Okay, I can. Did Brainstorm? Okay, Brainstorm is also having technical issues. He'll be back. I assume Brainstormer's internet crapped out, so we will have to wait. Technically, Ahsoka fall doesn't begin until the 21st of September. And even more technically, most people consider fall to start around the beginning of October. Okay, he's back now.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry, that was on my end.
I assume your internet crapped out again?
Yeah, just as I was adding you back on the stream, it crapped out. So
Aha.
yeah, I think we're good right now. So
Yeah, back to back to Gen V and the Vought Nana.
Did we really settle on Vought now? I could have sworn we.
I'm pretty sure every time we've done boys-related shenanigans, it's been Vought Nana.
Huh. Alright. Yeah, like I said before, this is the Red Band trailer for Gen V Season 1. Vought now?
Vought Nana.
I know there must be many thoughts going through your mind right now. Is this the right place for me? Do I belong here? But let me assure you that we see something in you. Something you may not even see yourself, even if you do have X-ray vision.
Congratulations.
Clancy Brown is always a win. That is all.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it looks good.
I kind of hope he has powers. I want Clancy Brown to have powers.
Yeah.
Especially because it'd be freaking hilarious if he had like wolf powers, because that would be a nice reference to Gargoyles, where he played Wolf as part of the pack.
Huh. Anyway, that was
But Nana.
Vought now.
And welcome to Godolphin University. You don't want to put flames on his clues, bro? It's like a big fiery sea cucumber.
Golden Boy, Jordan, Andre, they're going all the way. They could save thousands of people.
I was coming up with your Superman later.
It's weird how this feels like a very much like a. I think we mentioned it before when we talked about the teaser. It feels very like classic teen, like a teen drama show, right?
Yeah, it's almost playing it too straight.
Yeah. I won't say.
Because when you tell me like superhero college or superhero high school in the boys universe, I'm expecting super orgies.
I mean, they already did that. Okay.
Well, I mean, but even more so because college kids. Like, I mean, maybe I'm weird, but this is one area where I actually wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of like social commentary, like reference like the Brock Turner or Mattress Girl type thing, with like the super frat dude having sex with all the like super cheerleaders.
Yeah. Well said. It actually looks pretty, like visually, it actually looks good. Like it's not as washed out as I thought it would be.
Also, I like this trailer, or at least this trailer, I think has more of the boys vibe than the previous one did.
Yeah, yeah. Um, moving on.
Yep, Vought Nana.
But, you know,
That's terrible.
Big Coagula.
Even worse.
I'm not going back to the fucking woods! There's some weird shit going on. Who else would be cool? Nobody. Don't see.
I think I think that exchange kind of confirms my theory that the reason why it looked so picturesque in the first trailer was because like they want to make it look picturesque, but in actuality, this is Vought trying their darndest to have more control over the next generation of Supes because they learned
Yeah.
from Homelander.
if I remember correctly, the Dolkin was a reference to a character, obviously, in the actual boys comic. They're supposed to the superhero team known as G-Men, which is obviously like a riff on X-Men.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was the Godolphin was like supposed to be Charles Xavier, although
Huh.
I mean he wasn't a psychic or anything. He was I don't know if I should say it because not for spoiler reasons, but also it's really fucked up.
Say it.
I will give a letter, and I'm sure our minds can fill in the blank. It was a P.
Ew.
I
thought the Doctor Strange riff was bad.
There's Doctor Strange riff from the boys.
Yes, there is.
Huh.
They essentially have him be a human trafficker as a play on the phrase "get some strange."
What? Okay, whatever.
It's a term for prostitution. It basically means to fuck random people indiscriminately.
Okay, I really didn't want to know that. What was I gonna say? I don't think they're gonna do that here, obviously, because it doesn't really seem like that kind of deal.
I don't understand why their Charles Xavier isn't a telepath. We already have Mindstorm. Like, telepaths are a thing in this universe. We know this.
I don't know the comics. I don't fucking know.
I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for the goddamn actual fucking magic users to show up. But baby steps.
I'm honest, I think because the comics are just full on like fight shit of superheroes. So
Yeah, I mean the world building on the show is a lot better, I think, but
yeah.
that's neither here nor there.
Okay. Anyway, going.
What Nana?
Well,
What's going on?
It's lights.
There are evil people at this school.
This is way bigger than us. We need to make this right. This is your shot at real power.
Remember, no tiny action hero shit.
Get it, got it.
I am curious though how a bunch of teenagers got vaulted to begin with, because unless they're test tube babies like Homelander, don't most heroes within the boys have to be given compound V?
to be fair, they're giving the compound at a very young age.
Oh, I didn't. Okay, never mind. I withdraw my objection. I thought for most cases they waited until they were adults.
No, I think with regular compound V, you had to be a child because your body was more adaptable.
Oh, right, because it will otherwise flip shit over the genetic mutations. Okay, that makes sense.
It would kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That I withdraw my objection now. This makes that makes sense.
This does make me curious on where this series takes place in the timeline because of the compound V in season 2.
I assume the teachers, if they need to discipline the students, will probably be on V24.
Which is Timothy, which was introduced in season 3.
Yeah.
And we see Ashley in here. Also A-Train, so I don't know.
I assume this is after season 3, but before season 4. Because frankly, the boys can't afford to fuck around with timelines.
I swear to God. Anyway, shall we?
What, Nana?
I also want to point out the kids don't seem as fucked up as like the adults do.
Again, I think part of the justification for Godolphin University is, holy shit, we created a sociopath with Homelander. Let's not do that again.
Anyway, don't.
But Nana.
Well, yeah.
Sweet Jesus. Digging for the truth is a rush.
This is just a tiny bit fucked, isn't it?
Don't answer that. It's fucking rhetorical.
It's just a matter of time before they find out about everything else we're doing.
If the woods is exposed,
I will say they're actually building up a really interesting mystery here.
Yeah, I think my fan theory is all but confirmed.
Yeah.
Which, yay, I get bragging rights because I was right.
That rarely happens, to be fair with fan theories.
Usually the fan theories we come up with are better than what actually happens, and then we wind up bitching and then rewriting one or more of those characters into one of our universes.
But yeah.
Anyway,
Well, now.
but Nana.
we all have a big, potentially fatal problem.
It's lights out.
You're fucked up. I'm fucked up. The one thing that is really apparent now is that we are all fucked up.
It's lights out.
I had none. And, look, actually,
It's interesting. I'm looking forward to watching this.
it's weird because we both agree that we're not like the biggest fans of the boys in terms of like a universe itself.
No, as a concept, both the show and the comic are extremely nihilistic, and just for petty personal reasons, I want some freaking magic users. And actually, I think it would be really interesting to do magic users in the boys because of the edgy nihilistic stroke realistic bullshit. You'd almost think that the version of magic in the boys would have to be like really dark and satanic shit, like Aleister Crowley type shit. Or like EA co-editing type nonsense, which would be really cool to have like a demonic, like uber demonic version of John Constantine that was like a Thelemite or like a become a living god type person. That'd be cool.
Okay. But this looks legitimate at the very least entertaining.
Yeah, and again, I'm looking forward to you're gonna give a bunch of teenagers Compound V in the boys universe.
20-year-olds, because it said university, so I'm under the impression that.
Okay, so college, but even so, you're gonna give a bunch of college brats, Compound V in the boys universe. How many super orgies and or Me Too accusations are we gonna get out of this?
Anyway, shall we? Like 17 seconds left.
But Nana.
But, December 29th.
December 29th?
September.
Oh, so this month. Yay. I believe Castlevania Nocturne also comes out around that same time. I guess they're trying to counter program each other. One wonders where the fuck they were all summer because nothing really major hit in summer, but okay, no, I guess. Well, One Piece was also this month. Shit. So for some reason they took a massive break, but between the time that Dahmer and Wednesday came out and now, for whatever reason. I guess because people are more inclined to watch streaming during winter months, which does kind of make some sense. Anyway,
I've said enough on this thing. Last thing.
speaking of Castlevania Nocturne, please be good. Please be good. I want you to be good.
The official trailer, the main trailer, Castlevania Nocturne, which is a sequel series to the Castlevania series, which is fucking amazing.
Which follows Trevor and Sypha's great grandson, Richter Belmont.
No. Okay. I think he's supposed to be the great grandson.
Okay, let's actually do some math because
Okay, so he's in the first revolution. That's where this is set, and it was the late 16th century.
no 18th.
No, the late 16th century for Castlevania.
Oh right, okay. Well, I actually no. It was the late 15th or early 16th because it was
okay. Hold on.
It was 1487 or something along those lines when Lisa showed up.
I'm looking it up. I want to double check this so we're not talking out of our ass. Okay, 1476. Okay, so I was wrong. I will admit that.
Yeah. 1476 to 1789 or right around there because that was French Revolution.
Let me, 1792.
Okay. So that gives us 300 years and change.
They're the regular humans, Sypha and Trevor. So average lifespan is human. Granted, they're during those times. Effectively, they were middle aged.
Well, they were in their 20s in the event of the actual show.
Right, but I'm just saying, like in terms of lifespan of a human, especially with all the supernatural monsters and stuff, lifespan.
40 or 50 for someone in like upper crust territory with actual resources back then, which of course between Sypha's healing magic and the fact that House Belmont is still technically an aristocratic house.
Possibly 3 times great grandson? Maybe 4 times?
Okay, there's 300 and how many years between 1476 and
let me do the math. Okay, so 1476, Pennsylvania. That's 316.
Let's call it 50 years per generation just to make it a nice rounded number.
Okay.
Three times 50. Yeah. Divide by 50.
Well, no, 150. No, wait. Yeah, it would be 150. So would I divide 150 then?
No. You take the years between them, divide by 50. There were 316, so 316 divided by 50.
Divided by 15. And then 6.36.
Okay, so that's six generations difference. So son, grandson, great grandson, great great grandson, great 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 grandson. So
Then,
4 times great grandson.
so I was close. Okay. Huh. I'm gonna be honest. That is a surprise, given how much the Belmonts basically are just live a suicidal noble life. I'm honestly more surprised that they've lived that long.
Well, I mean, to be fair, they're also really good at the killing of the monster thing, and of course, with Syphus magic also, and the knowledge of Syphus magic also running in the family, and of course, Uncle Alucard also probably looking after them and teaching them stuff from Dracula's horde or what's left of the Belmont horde.
I'm assuming Alucard is in this show because we have in the teaser we heard him.
No, we heard what I thought was Dracula's voice. I didn't think we heard Alucard.
No, it was Alucard. I think that was different.
I'm pretty sure that was supposed to be Dracula's voice, but I could be wrong.
I swear to God, I swear to God, it was Alucard. Which means he is, to be fair. Actually,
Well, I mean, he's immortal either way, so obviously he's still going to be around.
well, no, that does bring up interesting because it is mentioned that he had an accelerated growth.
Yeah, but the way Dhampirs and vampires themselves actually tend to work is they age up to like their prime age and they stop. So Alucard has already hit his peak, and so he's frozen there for the remainder of time.
Until he dies.
Or at the very least has massively reduced aging because of the whole half vampire thing. He might age a little bit more than an actual vampire because half, but
yeah, I mean, I assume that. I'm just that's where I was curious about because I wasn't sure because he's only half. But also,
then again, they might be playing the game of the half version actually is better because all the strengths and none of the weaknesses, or like partial strengths and none of the weaknesses of vampires.
Anyway, shall we?
We shall banana.
No, we had something for this. I know it.
For Blood Nana. Blood Nana was what we were doing.
Yeah. All right. I was gonna say that, but I wasn't sure. So yeah, okay, Blood Nana.
Yeah, Blood Nana.
To the one before whom evil trembles.
I give my devotion.
To the devourer of light, the Messiah.
I pledge my service forever.
Good attitude.
Yeah, they mentioned the Messiah in the first one, in the first trailer too, and I'm like, I don't know who she's supposed to be off the top of my head. I had assumed Carmilla was maybe going to be the villain this time, because Carmilla in the games binds herself to a mask and basically uses it as a phylactery to keep herself around.
Yeah. I don't know. Like here's the thing. I try not to speculate because either I'm completely wrong,
or you wind up coming up with something better than the thing the actual show does.
Yeah, and also I think it's just kind of a waste to speculate when you can just enjoy it. When you can just
Yeah, I mean, fair, but part of the reason why Castlevania is so awesome is because it's a really good adaptation of the games, even if they do
No,
play with stuff.
I know. I'm just like personally, for me, I like to just go with the flow of things and just watch it.
Hmm
You know,
I, I, I can't help myself. I have to try and puzzle things out
I
because
I
I
think
remember. I remember throughout like the entire series wondering where Grant was going to show up, and turned out they gender flipped and race swapped Grant and made her Greta, and gave Alucard a love interest, which I don't hate actually, but still.
um actually with that, would this version of Alucard have kids then or a family line then?
That is a good question, and
The fact
how
that
much.
his father was his mother was human, his father was not, he's half human, so he simply has the ability to procreate.
Well, and vampires apparently can procreate with humans, obviously, in the first place because, well, Alucard exists. Um, so like, the question I suppose is how diluted are the vampire powers getting, or not, or did they even not bother having kids? I don't know. Also, is Alucard going to go insane like his dad did when Greta dies of old age?
I
Speak.
doubt it. Like, okay, so my
I don't want that to be the case. I could see them do it. Is the problem?
I doubt it because for like two main reasons. One, uh, Alucard already saw what happened with.
Yeah, he was the voice of reason when Daddy went over the deep end. So there's that. Speaking of Daddy going over the deep end,
Well,
if Drac and Lisa got resurrected by the energies of the Rubissal Androgyne, um,
and
or the Revis at the end of season 4, she's gonna age like a normal human again, presumably.
and two,
So
okay, here's the second thing. Lisa was brutally murdered by him, and if we're under the assumption that Greta would die of old age, then Alucard would have spent a long time with her, relatively.
yeah, hopefully. But
Yeah.
while
So,
we're on the subject of vampire grief, though, um, Dracula and Lisa got resurrected by the energy of the Rebus at the end of season 4. So what's gonna happen when she dies of old age this time? Is he going to be okay with that, or is he going to fall off the wagon again?
okay, well,
Dracula.
since we're not seeing Dracula in here, it seems to be a new threat. I'm being optimistic, saying that he kind of learned he was not be
One hopes, yes. I as much as the game plots do usually revolve around, and then someone did something that resurrected Dracula. Um, Dracula got his fucking happy ending, and I want them to keep the happy ending. So
um,
I hope that he didn't fall off the wagon. Not that we would particularly see him in this, because this is France, and lion-hearted continuity notwithstanding, Dracula doesn't really have a reason to be in France.
yeah. Anyway, and again, I think I think someone can kind of tell that there's a slight difference in like the art style a bit.
I don't hate it. They're
No,
obviously not cheaping. It's just
I'm not saying I hate it. I'm just saying that there's a slight difference in the colors are very
yeah,
much.
I know what you mean. But
It's
I'm
nothing.
more concerned about the writing. I'm more concerned about the writing, honestly.
I agree. I'm trying to make a list of things like pop art and like the colors, which I mean, as fantastical and amazing as the art was in the first Castlevania series, it was in terms of colors. Like it had very sparse flashes of colors.
Well, that and the original Castlevania was very was very red tinted, a lot of complex red use.
Right. Fair.
Whereas this one seems to be going more blue in its color scheme, which I don't mind. It's a good differentiating
Anyway.
thing.
Well,
But Nana.
We're looking for someone called Belmont. That would be the ungrateful wanker.
Tell me what you know about this vampire messiah.
She will bring horror beyond nightmares, suffering and pain beyond endurance.
Do you know what they are?
No!
Well, whatever they are, I'm sure they can die.
So they're saying she for the Messiah, which, I mean,
Yeah.
Logically, would be from it. For some reason, I don't know why, my mind also thought of Lenore.
No, she's dead. She's dead.
Which is the only other female vampire I can think of that died, but they're all, I mean, Carmilla died too.
Well, okay, but here's the difference. Lenore died of what for vampires is a natural cause. She committed suicide because she didn't want to be a slave or captured, and she stayed up and watched the sunrise. Carmilla died exploding with her own magic, which she did specifically to deny Isaac the pleasure of killing her. So I could easily see that turn into she basically did a death curse, bound herself to the mask, and then became a phylactery. My thinking is either this is a completely new character or Carmilla found herself a new body somehow, which is possible.
So apparently the Belmonts all did move again, like they did from France to.
Well, maybe not all the Belmonts though. All we know is Richter is in France.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily mean the entire line moved.
Dalton, can I?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's like, may I say what I was going to say?
Mm-hmm.
What I mean is, like, from the history that we got in season 2, it was said that the Belmonts originated from France, to Wallachia in the case of the monsters and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Particularly Dracula.
So, but they supplanted themselves in Wallachia for a time to the point that they became related to that.
Yeah, a fixture within the Wallachian aristocracy.
Okay. Given his accent, which is very much a British, almost Cockney accent, I could be wrong. It does seem that some Belmonts went to England at some point.
I hate to shit on your theory here, but Trevor had an English accent too. Even though he was Wallachian.
To be fair, that's just the voice actor. I'm not.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying is you're reaching the voice actor thing a bit.
But it was also the terminology that was being used, like the winker and stuff. British people.
Yeah, she said that though, not him.
There are days I really wish I could bitch slap you.
I know, and I've got it coming, and whenever we meet up, you have my permission to beat the living fuck out of me. But not today. But in any case, we don't exactly know who this Messiah is. We can assume that Dracula is not going to be involved because he got a happy ending, yay.
Actually, question. What we've seen so far of Richter, what do you think?
I have mixed feelings because Richter in the game takes more after Sypha's side of the family and is more intellectual, whereas this version of Richter seems to be taking a little bit more off of great granddaddy Trevor.
Yeah, and also, yeah, like that whole like cocksure attitude.
The I'm sure they can die thing. That's very. I as soon as he said that, I'm like, oh, he's taking after the Belmont family legacy there a little bit.
It could possibly be a character arc of blending both sides of the family. To be fair.
I mean, this is true. But in the games, that was just sort of Richter's personality, so I don't know how I would feel about that.
I think that I think it's very bad.
I don't really have anything else to add at this particular juncture. Shall we,
Yeah.
Blood Nana?
But
Okay, I don't know how I feel about this. With her basically doing for Richter what Sypha did for Trevor. Because,
well, okay,
again,
he is using magic actually, like in certain frames and scenes. Like
yeah, no, we see him using the blue flame magic there. But I'm just saying it seems like they reached a little bit far to replicate the same dynamic that Trevor and Sypha had, and maybe this is just a little bit of writer in me, but part of the reason to do the spin-off is to show the contrast, both in terms of time period, but also in terms of the character dynamics. So just taking a character and making her his Sypha is a bit cheesy.
Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna be honest. As I was watching this both like the first time and now, I'll be honest. I kind of like the first trailer better just because it had more of a atmosphere to it. This feels more just not generic, mind you, but classic kind of adventure story kind of deal. You know what I mean?
No, I get what you're saying, because this trailer seems to be focusing a lot more on action, and something that I thought worked really well for the Castlevania trailers, especially in the for the first series, was obviously there was action in it, but they were never the focus. The character dynamics and the like underlying philosophies were always kind of more the focus.
And the first trailer for Nocturne that we saw. Well, okay, not the teaser one, but the one we saw before this one, obviously, was I feel better in terms of like it did have a lot more like I said, it was more atmospheric. It actually did kind of set the character of Richter was more of a main focus.
He also seemed a lot more sympathetic in the previous trailer than he does here. Which, granted, maybe they're trying to hide the character stuff, but again, the thing is, and this was one of the things that maybe not a red flag, but was at least a yellow flag for me here, was Castlevania never focused. The trailers for Castlevania never really focused heavily on the action because they didn't need to, because the characters were always so well written and the philosophy was so compelling that, yeah, sure, people would watch for the action scenes, and people would enjoy the action scenes, especially because they parodied the shit out of the games, but they were never really the focus. And whereas here, they're focusing too much on the action scenes and not enough on the characters, which maybe not isn't, again, it's a yellow flag, not a red one, but I could easily see now that Warren Ellis isn't standing there to hold their hand and keep them focused on the characters and the philosophies. It might be an FTW Marvel situation where they think the thing that makes Castlevania work is the action scenes instead of the characters and the like underlying philosophy.
Now that I think about it, there aren't really a lot of action scenes in the original Castlevania.
I mean, no, not. I mean, every season has one really badass action scene.
No, yeah, but and like there's honestly, I would argue that there's at least one action scene in every episode, but
they never really marketed the show on the action scenes.
No.
It was always the intrigue that was the selling point.
Anyway, shall we look now or?
We shall blood nana.
Right. I just want to point out that the music, it's not bad, and it's clearly like a really cool. It's very different. Obviously, it sets stuff apart from Castlevania's music.
Yeah, it's doing an almost like rock thing with it as opposed to the like instrumental that the previous one did, which makes sense because it's.
I think it works. It's a bit weird, and I think it would take a bit more to get used, like listening to it a bit more to be used to it. Obviously.
Again, it seems to be focusing on the wrong thing, and the other worry I have with this trailer focusing so much on the action scene is if they did what the original series did and focused more on the talking and the intrigue and the philosophy and kept the action, limited to like 1 per episode or 2 per episode. Are they are they tilting their hand too much? Are they showing more? Are they showing all the best action scenes in the trailer? Because that would be bad and disappointing.
Well, it also makes me think. Okay, this is me being honest, right? Mm-hmm. If they are showing more action scenes instead of talking scenes, maybe because a lot of talking scenes have a lot of spoiler stuff to them.
This is also true.
So I could understand why they're doing that. Again, none of it looks bad. I'm gonna be fully honest. It doesn't.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't look bad. I think it's just missing a bit.
Yeah, it feels like it is missing, right?
Which might mean they're saving the best bits for later, right. But
yeah. I want to believe that. And so far, given the history of the Castlevania Netflix series, I am willing to at least be very charitable and very open to this because they haven't let me down so far. So
yeah, my one complaint or possible area of concern is so much of what made Castlevania, the first Castlevania show, as amazing as it was basically that it was Warren Ellis's baby. And now with him gone, I do wonder if the person at the reins is missing.
I guess we'll find out anyway. Shall we?
Blood Nana.
We're all afraid, Richter. Of course we are.
I've only been afraid once in my life. I won't let myself be afraid ever again.
I am Richter Belmont, last descendant of the Belmont clan, and I.
Okay, see here again is where I'm going. I don't know if I like that, because apparently he's the last descendant again.
Yeah, I remember hearing that and it made me think. Okay, not so much why the fuck, but it's weird that again that they're
trying so hard to make him like Trevor. and it really makes me
Okay,
question
so
whether they understood the reasoning behind doing a spin-off.
so I mean, to be fair, it was shown in the last trailer that his mother was killed. So
Yeah, something happened.
yeah, granted, rest of the clan, yeah, I'm a little iffy on, but it, and again, I can understand because some things constantly get destroyed and rebuilt again. You know, like
Here's the other problem with it though. They renamed Dynasty Belmont when they moved around the castle. And the way family names work, especially back during the Middle Ages, is your name was usually related to either your parents' names or it was a designation of where your family was ultimately from. Like, for example, Leonardo da Vinci was from a Italian village named Vinci, so he was Leonardo of Vinci. Um, and so, if there's a whole new town called Belmont that springs up around the castle, which is what very heavily seemed to be implied, you know, the village of Belmont, as Alucard put it, in season 4, then there should definitely be more Belmonts than there were, because not only are Trevor and Sypha gonna fuck like rabbits, but everyone from what was previously Dynasty now can reasonably take the Belmont name after a couple centuries.
yeah. I mean, a little over 3 centuries. Yeah.
And it's not like it's just one manor house or one family anymore. It's an entire town, all of whom um should have uh some variation on Belmont in their family name now. And not to mention, usually in the Middle Ages, you bred within your village, so even if they didn't, you know, even if the people of Dynasty didn't um take the Belmont name themselves, the ones that interbred with Sypha and Trevor's kids probably should, because well, Belmonts.
Um, I feel like boy or girl, someone that comes from Trevor's genes is just going to be I'm going to be honest, a slag is the best term I could use.
Well, but Sypha is very learned and posh though. Is the thing. So I would hope they would balance each other out. Not to mention Uncle Alucard, because
I'm just saying,
Lord knows that that Uncle Alucard and Auntie Greta are going to be taking quite an active interest in the raising of the little Belmonts.
I'm just saying, more than likely, from everything I'm aware of the Belmont family and a lot of the like later incarnations, they play it.
Oh yeah, the Belmont family is only barely upstaged by the Joestar family, and that's because a lot of people don't know this, but it's highly probable that the creator of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure based the Joestar family on the Belmont family.
And in short terms of this whole diatribe Don and I have had, I'm basically saying the Belmont family fuck.
Oh yeah, they do. Well, I mean, to be fair, he has an entire family line to repopulate. So, and let's be fair, I'm fucking, you know, I'm mostly gay. I have like a 70-30 split of like finding men attractive versus finding women attractive. But I would not turn down. I would not turn down. I would not turn down Sypha. So there's that.
I know he
So
could be very good for you. I feel like these two would be very good for each other.
Yes. Also, there would be so much geeking out about sorcery. It wouldn't even be funny.
That's kind of what I meant. Anyway, shall we continue?
Blood Nana.
Blood now.
Kill vampires! Who's fucking next?
I dreamt last night about the world we're making. All will worship me. All kneeling before me.
See, I want to know who this Messiah bitch is, both in canon but also in relation to the game, because I know she's probably someone, and I just don't know who, and it's bothering me.
It's a voice, and it doesn't sound like Carmilla.
No, it's certainly not Carmilla's voice actress, but then again, she might have done like a possessing someone else's body type thing.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's weird. Like,
It actually honestly sounds closer to Morana, one of Carmilla's sisters there that ruled in the quartet.
Yeah, but I thought, but she and her wife, Striga.
Yeah, Striga and Morana decided to bug her off, but then again, they have no qualms with eating people, so.
Oh no, I agree.
Even if they buggered off, they're still going to leave a swath of mutilated corpses in their wake.
But at least they were sensible.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it. I'm not saying that they shouldn't do that. I'm just saying a happy ending for Striga and Morana still involves a lot of butchered townspeople.
No, again, yeah, it's like they're villains, but at least the difference was the reason why I kind of like them more than Carmilla. One, because Carmilla is a full-on bitch.
Carmilla is insane, and honestly a feminazi as well, with the whole hatred of men.
Someone brought this up. I don't know if it was you or I just saw this somewhere, but I remember someone bringing this up. Is that she became the old crazy vampire that she hated.
Yeah.
Like in her end.
Yeah. No, she completely went mad, and she got so preoccupied with taking things from quote stupid evil old men that she became a stupid evil old woman.
Oh, the irony. I wonder who actually came up with that, because
that is probably a Warren Ellis creation if I ever heard one.
Yeah, that anyway.
I also want to know what happened to Isaac's kingdom in what used to be Styria. I want to know what good King Isaac did in his old age.
Yeah, it makes me curious because if I remember in the game, he started a cult for Dracula, and given the arc and story of Isaac,
he had a lot more of a happy ending in the show, and also he did vow to quote let him sleep at the end of the show. So
to be fair, in the game, Isaac was more of a servant than a friend.
I mean, yes and no. Hector and Isaac were still the humans that Dracula had probably the most regard for.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, even outside of the fact that obviously Dracula and Lisa are, alive and happy by the end of the show because of the power of the residual power of the Rebus. There really is no point in either Hector or Isaac's character arcs now for them to be like, oh, we're going to start a cult for Dracula, because, well, I think Hector even offered, he suggested, like, do we now ride to aid the return of Dracula? And Isaac is just like, no, we should not not bind ourselves to someone else's story. We should strive to live our own. Let him sleep, Hector. So yeah, neither of them really has any incentive to do anything other than, you know, basically become wise old scholarly wizards, and in Isaac's case, a wise old scholarly wizard king. But that's why I want to know what the kingdom of the good King Isaac looks like now.
What now?
Blood Nana.
Soon there will be only darkness, and terror will be all they know.
Okay, see, here's the other. I'm gonna call it an orange flag. It's not quite red, but it's an orange flag. So much of the greatness that was Castlevania was that the villains were not like myopically mustache twirlingly evil, and honestly, a lot more effort was put into their character arcs than in the heroes. So I hope that there's a more nuanced reason why this vampire messiah bitch wants to rule the world, and not just mwahaha.
Well, Messiah implies. Well, actually, I'll save that for something else. Anyway, it comes out of September 27th.
Okay, so end of the month, like 2 days before Gen V comes out.
Yeah. So anyway, shall we end this? It's almost midnight.
Yep.
With that, folks, I want to say goodbye. Adios, aloha, avida, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
please be good, Castlevania, and fuck off.